Israel, and Israel is reacting in self-defense. It's a double lie. The first lie is most of the Israeli attacks in Gaza don't even have anything to do with Gaza. So if you take Operation Cast Lead in 2008-9, why did Israel attack Gaza? Not because of Gaza, not because of anything Gaza did. The Israelis were very honest. This is revenge for Lebanon. In 2006, Israel suffered a major defeat in Lebanon against the Hezbollah, the party of God. And then Israelis began to panic. They're losing what they call their deterrence capacity. And their deterrence capacity simply means, it's a fancy technical term for the Arabs' fear of us. And they worried because the Arabs no longer fear them after this, you know, not a ragtag guerrilla army, but it's not a big thing either. It's about 6,000 fighters, the Hezbollah at the time was 6,000 fighters. And they effectively inflicted the defeat on the Israeli invaders of Lebanon. And so they were looking for somewhere where they could restore what they called their deterrence capacity. They didn't want to tangle again with the party of God, with the Hezbollah, so they targeted Gaza. It had nothing to do with Gaza. The notion that they're defending themselves against Gaza. The second big lie is, what does Gaza consist of? When you read the official reports, even when you read the human rights reports, they talk about this big arsenal of weapons that Hamas has accumulated. Number one, how do you know how many weapons they have? If you knew how many weapons they have, then you must know where they are. And if you know where they are, then Israel would preemptively strike. If it's not preemptively struck, it's because it doesn't know anything about the weapons. Israel plucks numbers out of thin air, and then all the official media and even the critical human rights organizations repeat these numbers. They talk about Grad missiles and Fajr missiles. What is Gaza? What are its weapons? What is its arsenal? Let's take the last attack. We know exactly how much damage was done by these weapons. There were 5,000 so-called rockets and 2,000 mortar shells fired at Israel. So altogether, that's 7,000 projectiles. You know the damage done? Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs had a diary listing all the damage done each day. 5,000 rockets, 2,000 mortar shells, one house was destroyed. One house. How is it possible that 5,000 rockets and 2,000 mortar shells can only destroy one house?
Good morning and good afternoon. That was, or is, our guest for today, Norman Finkelstein, on Democracy Now! Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, when he was promoting one of his books. That was my first time seeing him, and I was kind of blown away by the passion this man had or has. And I started following him and went down a bit of a Norman Finkelstein rabbit hole. So I'm very, very excited to have him on the show. I'm not going to lie, I was a little nervous because I have seen some videos of him hollering at people before. So I was like, oh, shit, we'll see how this goes. So let's introduce the crew. First and foremost, my co-host, my homie, my dog, Pascal Robert.
Brother Jason Miles, how you living, my brother? How are you?
I'm doing all right. So you might see a child in the background. He has not left yet. So that is how early it is for me. The kid is still here. Coming all the way live from the great state of Maine. You may know him as the Meme King on Twitter. We just know him as Marcus from the Left Flank Vets.
Yeah, that's how I do things. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm happy to be here. Very excited. Very excited.
And I'm just going down the list. And she has time to be with us all day today. The newest member of the Saturday crew. You may know her as the Green Party VP candidate. You may know her as a union organizer. You may know her as just a badass. Angela Walker.
Hey, y'all. Yeah, but my animals are out.
One of those days today. And he missed us last week. I was very hurt by that, but he's back this week. He is the best light-skinned brother on YouTube. Let's just be honest. He's light and he's all right. He's Paul Prescott from Jacobin.
It's great to be back. The Schminke Saturday was missing from my life. I had to come back.
So
also, you know, that is a compliment.
Okay.
I don't know for sure, but I assume there's a lot of light skins on YouTube. So
there is a lot. There is a lot.
Probably some stiff competition. So
Ray Reed gets a lot of views.
Well,
he's got
there can be only one, right? That's
light skinned Highlander. So let's bring on the man of the hour. I want to say this. I was introduced to this man by a good friend to Ray Reed, who also is a big reason for the show moving in the direction that it's moving, with Pascal and I working together. And when he said, hey, got a friend, what do you think about Norman Finkelstein coming on the show? And I was like, I fucking love it, but isn't he kind of mean? And he laughed. And so we had an email exchange, and I got to talk to Norm a few times, and I actually really enjoyed talking to him. He's really lucky I don't live in New York, because I'd be knocking on his door just asking to soak up some of this game. So without any further ado, please welcome Norm Finkelstein.
Thank you for having me. Does light skinned mean he's white or he's light skinned black?
No.
I don't know the lingo. I don't know the lingo.
No, he's not.
So,
no.
Well,
go ahead, Paul.
I mean, this could be a whole show. My father is black. He's from Barbados. My mother is white and Jewish. So
okay.
All
so
that.
You're in the Sean King Talcum X range.
No. So Norm. So check it, Norm. That's not cool.
Is it not?
Oh my God, this show.
Is it not?
So
I love that line.
So Norm. So we're talking on the phone last night, right? And
Man, this starts with a bang.
Norm goes. Norm goes like this. Norm goes, hey, you know Sean King? Have you heard these names? They call him Talcum X. He goes, I love that. He goes, Martin Luther Cream. He goes, man, I love that. So no, Sean King in the black community is kind of some bad shit. So Paul is not Sean King. Paul is the anti-Sean King.
This is why I had to take a little 2-week break from the show. You know,
Paul is the anti-Sean King. So, Joanna, can you make an anti-Sean King Paul thing, a meme, so we can make that go viral, so people know that Paul and Sean King are not the same guy? What's Sean King gonna do? Protest your house? He ain't gonna do shit.
I mean, you got Umar Johnson plus Sean King. You're uniting a big alliance, a big anti-Paul alliance. Damn.
Whew. No, Paul. What I'm saying is, we got your back. You don't want us to come to Philly.
from all the way in California. Great. Well, they're in Philly banging down my door.
Hey,
that's right.
I'm on the East Coast with you, Paul. I got you.
There you go.
Okay.
Angela's right there with you. Marcus is right there with you. Yeah, we will have so many brothers at your door. You don't even worry about it.
Umar can get this work, and I said it.
All right, I don't have my red bandana anymore in the background. But
have a bang.
Bye, son. My son is leaving. So Pascal has some questions for Brother Finkelstein.
Norman, that's my delegated role here. They make me ask all the time. I'm the bad cop. The Haitian guy's got to be the bad cop on the show. I don't know what it is with that.
Norm watched the show. He had some fucking criticisms for this motherfucking show. He goes, Pascal is the learned one. He goes, he's the bookish fellow.
It is funny. Pascal just has the questions ready. Like, all right, next question. No discussion. Keep going.
I try to ask these Dick Cavett ass questions, and then Pascal comes in like, no.
Well, Norman,
I'm not a flatterer, as you know. That's not my modus operandi.
No, I found that out soon.
It's very gratifying to watch your generation in action, because there are a lot of very smart and serious people coming out now. I have a great admiration for Crystal Ball, for Brianna Joy Gray, smart, serious, and it makes you, amidst all of the disaster, it makes you a little bit hopeful that maybe you guys are going to figure out a way out of this dead end that we're facing here. Can't say it's globally as bad as here, but here it's pretty bad. I mean, there's a whole generation that's genuinely suffering. No future, no hope, no organization. And maybe that's why people like yourselves have emerged. The times necessity is the mother of invention. And there is a necessity now for serious, clear-headed people to come forward, to think things through, and to figure a way out. So I'm seeing it more and more. I mean, I'm not a television watcher, and I've never been on Facebook or Twitter. I really don't even know what they are. But I do occasionally go on YouTube, and I see just really smart and serious people like yourselves. And that makes, it makes you a little bit hopeful. It's the only thing that makes me hopeful, that there are people who are having serious conversation. And Pascal, he comes prepared with questions. I saw the other day Brianna Joy Gray, she's debating this guy, Eddie Glaub, you know him from Princeton?
Oh,
very much so.
Yeah.
And she has his book, his latest book, the book on James Baldwin. She has the book down pat. She's citing, chapter and verse. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this woman has done her homework. And it was a good show. It's a good show because people are coming prepared, they're thinking, they're serious. So I want to, tell you that, not to flatter you, but to tell you that you give hope when you carry on in a serious, competent way.
Thank you very much, Norman. We appreciate your support. To have someone of your caliber give us that kind of praise means a lot.
It's the same thing with Paul. That's why immediately when I saw him, I thought to myself, okay, he must be a professor. And then when I heard high school teacher, I was actually even more impressed, because he obviously could have been a professor, but he took a calling which in my opinion is much more noble, to be a high school teacher. First of all, high school teachers have a much bigger impact on a person's life than the professor. Most people can never even remember their professors' names. Nobody forgets their high school teacher names. Never. I mean, I still talk with my friends about that high school teacher or that high school teacher. So in terms of having an enduring impact, a high school teacher is way ahead of any professor. But to do it, it doesn't have the stature in our society. So to do it, it's really honorable. It's really and he's a very smart guy.
He is.
Yeah, so
appreciate that.
It's an impressive generation.
This is the dream team I'm trying to put together here, Norm.
I think what my students will remember me for is, why does he talk about A. Philip Randolph all school year? Like, that's I find a way to insert him in every lesson. But
I liked Randolph. I had very mixed feelings about Bayard Rustin. Because I can imagine why. I lived long enough to see Bayard Rustin turn into a sack of shit. And it's unfortunately, it's all been whitewashed. What happened to Rustin in the last 10 or 15 years of his life.
All right, Norman, let's get to the questions since we're here. This first question we have for you. So, Norman Finkelstein, you perhaps being one of the most canceled intellectuals in America because of your critiques of how the Nazi Holocaust has been used for various unscrupulous reasons, including giving cover to the state of Israel. Can you explain why such subjects, if broached, relegate one to cancellation, and the ways in which these subjects are questionably used in your eyes, particularly the Nazi Holocaust and its utility to certain segments of the Israeli apologists and otherwise, and why that discourse is so ready for cancellation?
Well, I'm going to be candid with you. First of all, there are many sides to that question. I'll try to limit myself to the most important sides of the question. If you were to ask me why I got canceled, which is essentially your question on the issue of the Nazi Holocaust, I'll say the following things. Number one, ironically, I got canceled because I had a certain amount of immunity because I was Jewish. Now that might sound paradoxical to you. How could you get canceled if you had immunity? It was clear to everybody, or most people, that Jews who are powerful and they are rich, they're well organized, and they are powerful, and they are very rich, the richest ethno-religious group in the United States by a wide margin. You know, when I was growing up, the rich people were called WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. Jews have completely, left them behind. A very wealthy ethnic group, always well organized. It's part of the Jewish culture to form organizations, to protect themselves, and to have an elaborate, let's call it, machinery at their disposal. So it was very hard for anyone who is not Jewish to say anything critical of Jews, because on top of all that I just described, the conventional elements of power, they had the Nazi Holocaust. You wrap yourself in the Nazi Holocaust, pretend to be a victim in the United States, and you have this group collective immunity. And it's very hard for an outsider to criticize them because you immediately get accused of anti-Semitism. On the other hand, it was completely obvious to everyone that Jews were using the Nazi Holocaust, that they were exploiting it for all sorts of political aggrandizement. Now, you will remember, Pascal, I assume you're the oldest in the group, but you may not be, may all be of the same age cohort.
I am older. I'm Generation X. I was born in 1968.
Okay. So you will remember long time ago, Jesse Jackson at some point burst out, "I'm sick and tired of hearing about the Holocaust." And he got into a lot of trouble, even though he was simply saying what everybody else was thinking. "I'm sick and tired of hearing about the Holocaust." I'll give you one example which is very striking to me. And you'll forgive me for digressing, but sometimes digressions are illuminating. When we grew up in school, nobody ever talked about the Nazi Holocaust because it was for various reasons, which I don't have time to go into now. But we all read, Jew or non-Jew, we all read Anne Frank's diary. That was part of the curriculum. It was built into the curriculum. You usually read it in junior high school. You didn't read it as a Jewish document. You read it as a document of human suffering. It was a different era. Can't go into that now. But we all read it. Now, here's the interesting thing. Yes, the Anne Frank diary is very moving. I'm not going to deny that. Why should I deny facts? My credo in life is never quarrel with facts. It's a moving document, and certainly set in its historical context, it's very moving. But then, just in the last few years, I'm going to be honest with you.
For the first time, I picked up Frederick Douglass's slave narrative. And I then started to read everything by Douglass. I read the second autobiography, the third autobiography. I started to read the speeches. He was kind of breathtaking. You know, it's just breathtaking prose. How he managed to master it, only God knows, because he only gets out of slavery at 20 years old. His language is just breathtaking. What's my point? My point is, why weren't we reading Frederick Douglass's slave narrative in junior high school? It's just crazy. Slavery happened here. The Nazi Holocaust happened there. Frederick Douglass's slave narrative is not inferior in literary value to Anne Frank's diary. Why aren't we reading it? And of course, non-Jewish people are processing that. So someone like Jesse Jackson says, I'm sick and tired of hearing about the Holocaust, because he knows there's that Frederick Douglass narrative that we never read, but we always read Anne Frank's diary. He knows that. So he said it, and he got a whipping for saying it. I had the immunity because I could say it, but my parents were in the Nazi Holocaust. So you ain't playing that anti-Semite card with me. My father was in Auschwitz. My mother was in Majdanek. Every single member of my family was exterminated. I never had an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a grandmother, or a grandfather. Nothing. Everybody was wiped out. So I had a certain immunity, or at least it seemed as if I had an immunity, because you couldn't play the anti-Semite card with me or Holocaust denier card with me. So given that I had or thought I had a certain immunity because of my family pedigree, I started to say things that nobody else dared say. I mean, Jesse Jackson blurted out that comment in a moment of indiscretion, but I started to say it, to document it, to cite chapter and verse about how these crooks, these gangsters, hoaxers, and hucksters, as I called one chapter in my book, these hoaxers and hucksters were exploiting the Nazi Holocaust in order to protect Israel from legitimate criticism, and also in a kind of precursor to the Black Lives Matters grifters. They were engaging in a shakedown racket, pretending, just like the BLM grifters, pretending to represent needy Holocaust victims and going all over Europe, demanding billions of dollars in compensation for needy Holocaust victims, as they call them, and then took all the money and put it right into their pockets and right into their bank accounts, just like the BLM grifters. And I called them out on that. I knew the racket. I knew the survivors, of which there were only a few, weren't getting a dime of that money. There was a guy, his name, he's still around, Bert Newborn. He's a big shot, civil libertarian, ACLU, you know, all the fancy liberal woke credentials. And he went around saying, I'm doing this pro bono for needy Holocaust victims. I'm doing it pro bono. He said, my daughter was a rabbinical student. She died prematurely of a heart attack, if my memory is correct. And I'm doing it in her memory. So you know how much this pro bono Holocaust huckster raked in? He raked in over $8 million. over $8 million. I started to call him out. I walked around calling him the pro bono Holocaust huckster. So at a certain point, I became a problem. I became a problem because I knew too much. I had a kind of impregnable pedigree. You want to call me a Holocaust denier, which is what they started to call me. I would say, if I'm a Holocaust denier, I must be certifiably insane because my parents passed through it. So you're telling me I'm denying what happened to my parents? And so at a certain point, I had to be stopped. And I'm of the opinion that I wasn't stopped because of my politics. Because, you know, in academia, you can say pretty much what you want. It's a crazy place, has no connection with the real world. At least the social studies. I'm not speaking about the natural sciences. It's a crazy place. You know, this it's this politically correct lunacy. You begin graduate seminars. Each person, you go around the room. It used to be in graduate school seminar, you went around the room and you would ask each student, what are your intellectual interests? That's how I began graduate school the first day. What books are you reading now? What journals are you reading? You know what they talk about? They ask now? You go around the room, what are your pronouns? It's so laughable. Paul Prescott, thank you, lucky stars. He never went into academia. No, really.
There was a reason. There's a lot.
Yeah, they ask you your pronouns. So when you ask me my pronouns, I'll tell you my pronoun. Fuck you. Fuck/you. That's my pronoun.
Norman, you said something interesting.
Wait, I want to just finish it up. So I had to be stopped, but not because of what I was saying in academia. Because in academia, you could say anything. It's because I was attracting for a period of time quite large crowds, because I was speaking on Israel-Palestine mostly. So it'd be 500 people, 1,000 people. I was reaching a quite large audience. And I was out of control. They didn't know what to do with me. I was out of control. They couldn't play their Holocaust denier card with me. They couldn't play their anti-Semite card with me. And I was out of control. And so I had to be canceled. Canceled for me means turning a person into a non-person. And they had to cancel me. And that's what happened, you know.
Well, I just wanted to elaborate on a statement you made because it's very interesting. You were talking about how certain members of the Jewish community have a certain degree of wealth, power, and influence. What I find interesting is that when individuals state that to demonstrate why criticism of Israel becomes unwelcome in our society, those statements are immediately grounds to be called anti-Semitic.
You're totally correct. Believe me, even in reasonable left Sarah circles like Jacobin, you can't say that. They say that's an anti-Semitic trope. That's the idiotic language. You know, whenever I hear the word trope, I want to reach for my gun. Well, okay, I'm just using that language. It's an anti-Semitic trope. Yeah, but here's the problem. You ready for this? What happens if the trope is true? What happens if the trope is true? Jews are rich. Jews are very proud to be rich. We have a Yiddish expression, to kvel. Paul's half Jewish. Do you know kvel? Kvel means to boast. They boast about the fact that they're rich. But then if you say Jews are rich, if you were to say it, Pascal, it's anti-Semitic. Well, what happens if the stereotype is true? It's a stereotype. It also happens to be true. What is a stereotype? A stereotype is the pejorative word for a generalization. When you don't like a generalization, you call it a stereotype. But Jews are, in general, rich.
I generally like to say
Jews are, in general, powerful. To be Jewish in the United States, a victim, let's look at the facts. In my generation, who was the sweetheart of America? Mary Tyler Moore. Do you remember her, Pascal?
Yes, I do.
Mary Tyler Moore married a Jew. Who was the apple of Bill and Hillary's eye? Chelsea. Chelsea married a Jew. Who was the apple of Donald Trump's eye? Ivanka. She married a Jew. Poor her, she married Jared Kushner, but she married a Jew. Joseph Biden. He has three daughters. Do you know all three married Jews? Now you telling me the whole ruling class are marrying victims? That doesn't sound right to me. But you can't say that. Jews are rich. We would say, Mazel tov. Good for you. You're rich. You made it. You made it. They made it in the United States. I'm not going to fault them for making it. You know why? I'm going to be honest with you. Jews worked hard. You don't want to hear it? I'm going to tell you. I knew the Charles Schumers. I knew the Stanley Kaplans. You know Stanley Kaplan with the prep. Okay, he was in my neighborhood. His daughter Linda was in my class. They worked hard. They were clever. They made it. They made it. Okay, but then Mazel tov. Good luck to you. But then don't tell me I can't say it because it's anti-Semitic. You got a lot of money. You got a lot of power. You're very organized. That's a fact. You saying somebody is Jews are rich, you're not allowed to say it's anti-Semitic. You know what's another thing it said? If you say Jews think they're better than anybody else, that's anti-Semitic. If you say Jews think they're better than anybody else, that's anti-Semitic. It's a standard question on the surveys. Do you believe Jews think they're better than anybody else? If you say yes, you're called anti-Semitic. Now listen, guys. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. All my friends were Jewish. I right now live in an all-Jewish neighborhood in Brooklyn, Ocean Parkway. Iraqi Jews, Syrian Jews, Russian Jews, even a communist Jew. 6th floor, 2245 Ocean Parkway, even a communist Jew. I've never met a Jew who didn't think they were superior to non-Jews. I've never met one. I've never met one. So that must mean all Jews are anti-Semites because all Jews think they're better than everybody else. Prescott, you're half Jewish. So I assume you think your Jewish side is better than your non-Jewish side.
Oh, don't roll me into this.
What? I see all your faces. You're so frightened. You're so like, oh my God. This better not go out on YouTube.
It's not frightening, Norm. It's just that we know right now that we will definitely be canceled after this show, or at least won't be able to get anybody in Hollywood on.
Relish in the last This Is Revolution show.
What?
I said, let's enjoy this last This Is Revolution show. You know, we're gonna go out with a bang.
So just as Norm, by the way, so there's a man that makes all the This Is Revolution imagery, and he just hit me up in a text message. He goes, "Man, this Norm guy pulls no punches." I was like, "No, not at all."
You know what's funny? You know what's funny? In the real world, now to lower the volume. Nothing that I'm saying, honestly, I can say controversial things. Nothing that I'm saying is even controversial. You just have to look at the statistics on distribution of income. And any sociologist will tell you that by far the richest religious ethno group in the United States is Jewish. And so Pascal asks a perfectly reasonable question. If you say what's factually the case, what's staring you in the face, you get accused of being an anti-Semite. If you read books by Jewish authors, by someone like Philip Roth, he'll write in his novels, he'll say, of course, Jews are reared, they're raised on the ethic that Jews are better. It's a secular version of the chosen people. And you can't say it. That's what's kind of funny. It's something that every Jew will tell you. Most Jews, 99.9%, will brag about. And then if you say it in the open, you say, you're right, you'll get canceled. You'll be taken off Twitter. It's funny. It really is.
Norman, I have a question too, because this idea of like canceling, which like I feel like there's varying degrees of what it means to everyone from, hi, I'm someone popular and Twitter's the first time I've ever heard someone criticize me, to something that you've experienced yourself in your professional career, to which case you can't find a job. You've been, blacklisted, you've been cast out. And so I guess, yeah, can you talk about that experience, but then also why that can tie into why you say what you say, right? Why that there is no, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm afraid to say it, but why you talk about what it is? Because if you are able to critique a class that is seen that it's on the lower tier, but then the response to that is you not being able to find a job, were you really critiquing a underserved class?
I want to add one thing before we go there. Norman, for me, I don't believe in essentializing anyone. So the same way we can say, I say members of the Jewish community. So yes, there are members of the Jewish community who are very rich. There are members of the Jewish community who are very poor. But you're not going to say that there are no poor Jews in America, because the same way people will say that about Jews, they can say, well, all blacks are poor, all blacks are criminals, all blacks are ex-white. So I'm not a fan of essentializing whole communities based on behaviors of segments of those communities. I would simply say that certain members of X community do X, Y, Z. So
look, Pascal, we could have a very long discussion, and unfortunately, your time is limited. And I see from Paul Prescott's face, he's thinking, I don't want to lose my job at my high school, so I better stay quiet. So I don't want to, so to speak, burden you people with my points of view. But on the other hand, Pascal, I think we should make an effort to be intellectually honest. The field of sociology as a field, it couldn't exist unless people made generalizations. Most black people vote Democratic. Most white people in the South vote this way, that way. That's what sociology is all about. You make group generalizations. That's how experts in elections get their candidates elected. They get a focus group representing different groups, and test out certain questions, certain policies to see which works, which doesn't. It all depends on generalization. So when you say Jews are the richest religious ethnic group in the United States, it's a generalization, which means something that's generally true. And why can't you make those generalizations? I spent a lot of time the past few months reading through W.E.B. Du Bois. Again, I'm not a flatterer. It's not my nature. But I was kind of wowed by Du Bois. I would say one of the best scholarly studies. I won't classify it as history. I won't classify it as sociology. I was really kind of wowed by The Philadelphia Negro. Now, that was his first book after his doctoral dissertation was published. Du Bois goes to Philadelphia, plops himself down in a poor neighborhood of Philadelphia. The black neighborhood, not totally, but in general, quite poor. Believe it or not, I know you guys won't even believe it because that was an era where people did serious study. He interviewed 8,000 families.
Wow.
8,000 families. I mean, can you even comprehend that? And he writes a sociological study of the Philadelphia Negro. Open up the book. It's all generalizations. It's all generalizing. He generalizes about this group, generalizes about that group. He has some nice things to say about Jews. He says, blacks can learn something from Jews about family life. They can learn something about Jews, I know you'll laugh at this, about saving money. Because he thought black people spend too much money on frivolous things, trying to show off. The whole book is generalizations. And then you, as a perfectly intelligent man, I won't say young, middle-aged, or old, but perfectly intelligent man, you want to say you shouldn't generalize. It's called essentializing. It's not essentializing. Groups behave in certain ways. And then you generalize from that. It doesn't mean there are no exceptions. But this whole framework of thinking now, it's completely, totally insane. It's insane. You listen to Democracy Now!, they talk about people having babies. People have babies. You choose your sex. You choose your sex. I mean, have you fucking taken Bio 101? What are you talking about? You're reading the New York Times. You choose your sex. I mean, it's complete nuts. And I'm not going to be part of it. That's not essentializing. You want to tell me the whole corpus of Du Bois' work? Because he was a pioneer in the field of sociology. You're going to tell me his whole corpus is disqualified because he generalized, and generalizing is essentializing? It's nuts. These people haven't a clue of an idea. They want to write up curriculums. Curriculums? You want to prescribe curriculums? You can't write an English sentence. It's all gobbledygook. It's incomprehensible the way these people talk. I listen to Patrisse Cullors. I'm the object of misogyny. I'm the object of this and me and that and me and thisism and thatism. No, you're not. You're just a crook. It's not complicated. But they draw in all this phraseology.
Hold on.
All this phraseology to try to intimidate you. Completely illiterate people teaching English who never read a novel. They never read a novel. You should read Ibram X. Kendi. I've never read prose like that. Ibram X. Kendi.
Don't worry. Jason can read Ibram X. Kendi. He has the books on hand.
Excuse me?
And I'll read the children's book as well.
Oh, yeah, the children's book.
I've read the children's book.
I don't understand why he's writing children's book. All of his books are children's books. All of his books are children's books. They're completely illiterate. I wrote 40 pages in the book I'm currently writing. I wrote 40 pages on Kendi. 40 pages, 20,000 words. And I sent it around to the top scholars because I didn't know, maybe I went too far. I won't name you the top scholars over the, obviously I wouldn't say it over video, but if you ask me privately, I'll tell you. Black and white, I asked. I have, people, I won't say who, but I know the top scholars, black and white. Now, I was ruthless with Kendi, ruthless Kendi. The chapter's titled Ibrahim Kendi and who's hot and who's not. Because that's what it basically is. If you're an anti-racist, you're hot. If you're not an anti-racist, you're not. And he just goes through all of history and says, he's a racist, he's not a racist. Everybody, every black person, except Angela Davis and Malcolm X, every black person since the beginning of time was a racist. Everyone. Richard Wright, racist. What's her name? The poet from the
Maya Angelou.
Phyllis Wheatley. Phyllis Wheatley, racist. Racist. Everybody's a racist except him. He's cutting edge. It's crap. And Pascal, you're a smart guy. Don't be browbeaten. Don't be intimidated. Don't use those idiotic phrases. Essentializing. You're not essentializing. You do what any sociologist does. You make generalizations.
Yeah, but we also know that the history of sociology was about reconciling poverty with capitalism in terms of the origins of the discipline. So I don't necessarily take the credentials of sociology as being the determinant of human behavior. I tend to try to root it in political economy. So I don't want to mystify it by saying that X is X because they all do that.
Pascal, because I respect you, I am compelled to answer you. If I didn't respect you, I would do what everybody does with Obama. Oh, he's so brilliant. He's such a genius. No, I don't do that shit. That's disrespectful. Every time a white person says how brilliant Obama is, you know that white person is just one more liberal, woke racist. Because Obama is not brilliant. He's not even smart. He's okay. That's it, beginning and end. To respect you is to answer you. You say, I tried to root behavior in political economy. Fine. I have no problem with that. But what is class if not generalizing? How could you have a notion of class without making a generalization? Are there exceptions in the class? Of course. But you're generalizing about behavior. That's what class is. Certain classes behave in certain ways. Now, you're rooting their behavior in economic structure. Other people rooted in different other kinds of structure. But you're still generalizing. You can make certain generalizations about how members of the bourgeois class will act and behave in most situations. Are there exceptions? Yes. Lenin was born into, I think he was a grade 7 noble in Russia. He behaved differently. Trotsky came from a very wealthy trading family. He behaved differently. Rosa Luxemburg came from the Polish bourgeoisie. She behaved differently. There were some exceptions. But can you generalize about bourgeois behavior or working class behavior? Of course you can. That's what politics is about, generalizing.
I respect that. No, listen, this is a deep conversation, and I love the exchange. But I have some questions that I want to continue on. Let us continue.
Wait, I don't know.
North Star. It's the question.
I don't know that. Angela, did you have a Pascal? Angela, did you have a question?
Yeah, we're gonna let Sister Angela come in here because she hasn't.
I don't have any questions. I got a lot that I could say about certain things. Respectfully,
I'd like to hear you because if I'm off base,
let's keep it civil. Let's keep it civil.
So I'll always be civil. I have nothing but respect for you. I would never disrespect you. That's not how I move. But I also think that because what is the most diplomatic way I can say this? When we start moving into territories of gender, of sex, and reducing things to biological essentialism and saying that there's no variation in how people express their sex or their gender, I will always get my back up. And I think that also, just taking into account that there are, your understanding and your generation's understanding of things like this is what it is. And, I consider you an elder and would not debate you on that. However, I think that it's harmful when statements like the ones that were made about gender and sex, and the fact that, yes, I have my feelings about Miss Colors personally, but I also understand the point about misogynoir playing into some of what she has been accused of. And I don't think those things are two separate things. We experience those things at the same time. And so I'm just a little prickly about that. But like I said, I would never be disrespectful to an elder or anything like that. But when we're talking about sex, gender expression, sexual orientation, the fact that people are asking pronouns or being asked their pronouns when they're being introduced or coming into a class, those things matter. They matter because a whole lot of us, and I think that you, Dr. Finkelstein, can definitely attest to this, you know what it is to be marginalized. And the people that are at the center of these things, these are not giant efforts, but these are efforts that matter to address the marginalization of people. Someone who is trans, someone who is intersex, someone who is non-binary, who is in an academic setting does not deserve to be misgendered because other people are considered being PC to ask them what their pronouns are. That is violence. And so that's pretty much where I stand on that, respectfully.
First of all, Angela, you should call me Norman. If I call you Angela, you should call me Norman. It should be in an equal playing field. Angela, first of all, you can't possibly disrespect me if you treat what I say seriously. That's respect. So if you differ with me, you've listened, you've processed, and you disagreed, that's showing respect. So you don't have to apologize for having listened, processed, and reacted. That's respect. So we should just set that aside. I'm not God, and a lot of my opinions are not based on having exhaustively read on the subject. Some subjects I have sat down and read through, others I don't have an exhaustive or authoritative knowledge. So, of course, you should feel free to disagree. I would say, personally, I would prefer if you don't emphasize elder. It's like when people say to me, you look great for your age. I think, why do you have to add for your age? Just you look great, period.
I want to add, I want
to just respond now.
In my community, it's a term of respect. I just want to say that. I'm old school Black, and we were raised a certain way. And I think, those, Pascal, you know what I'm talking about. We were raised a certain way. It's not saying, oh, you're older. It's respect.
I want to tell you something interesting, Angela. I mean, you asked 3 substantive questions, and I have to answer them. But you just said something extremely interesting, and I hope that Pascal is listening. She said, I grew up in the Black community, and we're taught respect. If you read Frederick Douglass, if you read W.E.B. Du Bois, they will also talk about that as being a redeeming virtue of Black people, that they have a respect for elders, that they have good manners. Pascal, she was just guilty of essentializing. She made a generalization about Black people. I'm from the Black community, and we grow up respecting elders. That was essentializing. And I'm surprised you didn't step in and say, Angela, we shouldn't make generalizations like that. Those are essentializing. You didn't. You know why you didn't? Because you know what she says is obviously true. Anybody who, young Black males growing up in the church, I see it in my students. They're much more respectful of me than my white students. It's just perfectly obvious. It's perfectly obvious. So what she's saying is true. It is a valid generalization. It's not essentializing. Having said that, I don't like to be the big person on the screen. Would you mind having Angela on the screen? Not because I'm being a chauvinist, but because I feel better about it. I don't like staring at myself like I'm, on Mount Rushmore. So, Angela, you said three things. Number one, the thing you said, talking about sex and gender and making generalizations. If you go back and look at the tape, the video, I never used the word gender. I said sex. Now, a few of my best friends are doctors. One of them is a pediatrician. He says, part of my job, when a baby is born, the first thing we have to do is classify it by sex. Male, female, in the most remote, rare cases, very rare, you have intersex. Very rare, 1,000th of 1%. Male, female. You ask any biologist, they will tell you there are two sexes. Not talking about gender, not talking about behavior, nothing. Just the biological descriptive of male, female, pertaining, among other things, to the capacity to reproduce. You need a male and a female. Sex. Now, if you listen to woke circles, they will say there aren't two sexes, leaving aside again the intersex. It's just not true. Ask you go to your most woke biologist friend, your most woke medical doctor, and ask them, how many sexes are there? There are two. So I never talked about gender. Angela, I'm going to be perfectly frank. I never talk about sex. I'm not a biologist. I'm not a physician. I ask physicians. I ask biologists, is there any basis to this? And they laugh at you. It's completely crazy. Now, in terms of behavior, of course there's a huge range. Of course there's a huge range. I'm not going to deny that. Anybody who studied Anthropology 101 knows that varying with cultures, forget about within culture, varying between cultures, the range of behavior is quite extreme. So I have no quarrel with that. Now, on the question of graduate student seminar, I don't want to be rude here, but the passage from Ecclesiastes, there's a time and place for every season. There's a time and place for every a time and place. When I go to graduate school to seminar, I have a specific purpose in mind, an objective. My objective is to learn, to study. It's one of those points where we're focusing, for better or for worse, we're focusing on your gray matter, the cerebral aspect to you. And in my opinion, it's completely out of place to be talking in seminar class about your pronouns, about your sexual affinities, about 10,000 other things. We're here, we have a specific purpose.
I don't want to interrupt, but I think really at the end of the day, holy fuck. When we use language, you know, because I can understand that, you know, I don't think, Norman, you're upset that people were introducing themselves in a behavior that is accepting to our trans community. I don't think that's not something that you're actually aggrieved about. You're upset that when you go into a scholarly space, something that used to be there, which was, what is your intellectual, desires? Where do you want to go? You know, that used to be at the forefront. And I don't think it is necessary to be flippant about, the addition, an addition that has been made, because what it seems is that you're upset about the subtraction of a discussion that used to be at the beginning of, this process. Because, yeah, and I really, at the end of the day, I feel like when we're talking about, you're not wrong, right? You're not wrong when you're discussing generalities and what should be the focus of academic spaces. But now we're getting to the point of how can we use language just to make sure that our points are getting across? And are we using language? Are we using attitudes that are turning people off to our message that could be correct? And I think that's kind of where we're at now, is that I'm hoping that your point wasn't to say these people should not be able to, speak and just live their lives as they wish. What you're saying is that there was something that used to be involved or engaging, and that it has been replaced with something, and not to say that it's more of the subtraction than it is the addition.
I would like to come in and say, ultimately, Angela, I could see that she felt a certain way about a comment, and I didn't want to ignore the way she felt. And there's people that I'm interacting with on the chat right now. As someone that has been in a situation where I have said the wrong thing or said something that pissed somebody off, I can't really be flippant about it and be like, well, fuck you, you don't get it, or whatever, I didn't mean that. There's something to be said about watching people actually have a conversation, a respectful conversation, that I think is important. So while we didn't bring Norm on to talk about issues of gender,
fortunately,
the fact that this came up, but the fact that these two people had a conversation about it, I do find that somewhat important. I didn't know it was going to be a little bit of a derailment of the show, but I do think these conversations are important because, as someone that's been in a room, and I've been much older than the people I was in the room then, and people call me boomer, and I'm like, no, I'm not. and maybe I didn't say the right pronoun, which is weird because it's kind of talking about someone. I've had people jump down my throat, and so I feel like these situations can be talked through, and there are bigger issues that we will cover, that we're going to cover now. Let me bring in Pascal with the questions.
I want to just briefly respond.
Sure.
First of all, Angela was completely respectful. It was completely within her right to ask that question, and it's completely within her right to make an objection. And I try not to rank, bigger questions and smaller questions. I try not to. It's a legitimate question, and I'm not going to excuse myself. in the book I'm currently writing on cancel culture, a large part of it is devoted to Du Bois. I wanted to see, how does he discuss issues of race? What does he mean by racism? And how does he interact? Remember, Du Bois was in the most elite circles.
Yeah.
And he's very honest. He said, I never liked to be around white people. He says that, even in the liberal circles. He said, I never really liked to be around them because you can always feel the condescension. And so he kind of, formally he was with the NAACP, but in his personal life, he had very few white friends, very few white friends. And he says it because, he feels the condescension, that they can't quite grasp. He might be as smart as, and maybe even smarter than them. It can't sink in. So I read him to try to understand how a person who I've come to admire only in recent years, because now I read him seriously, how he deals with these questions. And it's an illumination to me. So I'm both studying it, and now to get to that third point of yours, Angela, I've seen too many Jews, when they get caught doing something dirty, wrapping themselves in their victimhood and start calling out anti-Semitism, playing the Holocaust card, doing all that sort of stuff. And it nauseates me, frankly, it nauseates me. And so when I see Patrisse Cullors being called out because she's a crook, and then dragging in the misogyny, and then Mark Lamont Hill, he says, oh yeah, this is really about misogyny and white people not wanting to see rich black women. No, that's not what it's about. It's about a crook. And you got caught. And you want to hear the funniest thing? She keeps calling it a white supremacist right-wing attack. Go on YouTube. Find me one white person who's attacking her, aside from when it started with Fox News. It's all blacks. There's now about 300, 400. I've watched them. Curiosity, I've watched them. It's all black people attacking her for being a crook. And she calls it a right-wing, a white misogynist attack. Has misogyny come out? Yes, of course it has. And guess what? Some of the people who accuse Jews of exploiting the Nazi Holocaust, they're anti-Semites. I know that. But what they're saying is true. Jews are exploiting it. Personally, I can disagree with people here. I don't like Louis Farrakhan. I think he's kind of, Al Sharpton on steroids. But when he says certain things, they happen to be true, and I have to deal with the truth. It's like when people say you're a self-hating Jew. I say, okay, but how does that change the facts? If I were a self-loving Jew, does that mean everything I say is true? Whoever I am, it's irrelevant. And the same way, she's using those claims about misogyny and this to deflect from the fact that she's a crook. And I don't go for that. It's a game. Jews are very adept at playing that game. I've watched it my whole life. I don't like it. You got caught. And I have to deal with it. But don't start dragging in misogyny, though what you say is true. I talked about it last night with Mr. Miles. He asked me very frankly, he said to me very frankly, he said, well, don't you think, how do you feel about the people who are in the black community who are now talking about they being lesbians and blah, 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 blah. Of course it's not a good thing. I recognize that, but I'll say what I said to Miles. If the Black Lives Matter movement had started out being more inclusive and including black men in its leadership, maybe it wouldn't have gone here. Maybe it wouldn't have gone there. But there was a feeling, judging from what I'm watching and reading, There was a feeling that, hey, a lot of these people being killed by the cops are black men. But how comes they're not in the leadership position of Black Lives Matter? There was that feeling. Is it legitimate? Is it illegitimate? That's for you folks to discuss. But
why? Because it's an essentialized black organization. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke.
I want to say something else. Earlier you said that you're not God, and my impression was that all Jews thought they were God. So I'm a little. That's also a joke. That's also a joke.
I
lighten the mood a little. Yeah.
As you know, Paul is half Jewish, and as Shakespeare said, many a truth is said in jest.
There you go.
Yeah.
But we still have questions.
Can I get a question? Can I get a question in?
You already got two already.
No, my question got canceled. My question got canceled. Well, you're writing your next book, and you're talking about cancel culture. I'd heard something that you did an interview before, just a little bit on Obama. But something that I kind of want to key in is on the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And yeah, kind of just getting your perspective and kind of where you think that they went wrong or maybe going wrong.
That was actually one of my questions, Marcus.
Oh man, well, my bad. I was looking over your shoulder when you wrote that one down.
Well, first of all, it wasn't just the Holocaust industry people that canceled me. BDS also canceled me. I don't speak anymore. I told you there was a period where I spoke and I attracted large audiences. I don't speak anymore. I was canceled by BDS. I was also canceled, to be perfectly honest. I was canceled by Democracy Now! I don't appear on the show anymore. Amy is very politically correct,
I cut out the part of the clip where she goes, Norm, can you stop with the ad hominem attacks? And you're like, no, these people are horrible.
Ad hominem attacks are only permissible for people you don't like. You're allowed to call Saddam Hussein a murderer or a killer or this or that. But when you say it about somebody who's respected, then it becomes an ad hominem attack. Only the enemies are allowed to be called using personal. Yeah, I'm not going to. I say Bert Newborn is a Holocaust huckster. I tell him to his face. He's a crook. Is calling a crook a crook ad hominem? I don't know. These are dictionary words. They have definitions. If the definition fits you, I'm going to call you that. You're a crook. Is that ad hominem? It's ad hominem if you don't demonstrate it. Then it's ad hominem. But if you can demonstrate it, if you can adduce the facts that support the claim, there's nothing ad hominem about it. In any event, yes, I was canceled by Democracy Now! She accused me of white male privilege. I thought it was interesting. Amy Goodman accuses me of white male privilege. Her father went to Harvard. Her 3 siblings went to Harvard. She went to Harvard. But I'm privileged. My parents came over on these shores after stepping out of concentration camps. I grew up poor. My house was so cold, we used to put the steak in the freezer in the winter to defrost it. But I'm privileged. And white male privilege.
That was your moment, Pascal.
I'm privileged.
All right,
white male privilege. She put me in the same category as Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, Steen. We're all white male privileged. And that, Angela, Pascal, that's my problem. Amy Goodman is a perfectly intelligent person. I knew her for 30 years. I knew her before she was Amy Goodman. I knew her when she was just Amy, a friend of mine. I knew her through a mutual friend. And now, probably one of the most privileged people on earth. I don't think there's any family in the United States, where all 4 siblings went to Harvard. Not even a Kennedy. Impossible. No. Very unusual. Probably in the whole United States, hers is the only family where all 4 siblings went to Harvard. And she talks to me about privilege. That's the whole thing with this cancel culture. It's the most privileged people on God's earth, talking down and telling white workers you're privileged. It's just funny. The blindness, the lack of self-awareness, it's breathtaking to me. This whole so-called left culture, it's not left, it's lunatic. They talking down to white workers about white workers' privilege. So, having said that, the question of BDS.
Yes.
There are 2 things to say about BDS. Number one, I had disagreements with them over their platform because I thought the platform was inconsistent. They claimed that they were basing their goals or objectives under international law. I know international law pretty well. I teach international law. And just as international law says, Palestinians have a right to self-determination, Palestinians are a people. The occupation is, at this point in time, illegal under international law. Israel has to withdraw. Palestinians in Israel have the right to equal rights, and Palestinian refugees have the right to return. I agree with all of that. I have no problem with that. But international law is like all law. Law is about rights, but it's also about responsibilities. Law is about rights, but it's also about obligations. You have a right to cross at the red light because, you have a right to cross at the green light because you have an obligation to stop at the red light. There's the right and there's the obligation. Now, if you look at international law, Israel, under the law, I'm not talking about personal opinions. Under the law, Israel is a state. You may not like that fact. You may be very angry at that fact, but it's a fact nonetheless. And so if you claim to be basing your program on international law, if that's what you claim, then you have a right to self-determination. You have a right to return if you're a refugee. You have a right to equal rights as a citizen in Israel, but you also have an obligation to recognize Israel. Now, of course, you have the option of saying, I think international law is a crock. It's racist, sexist, imperialist, Zionist, male chauvinist, blah, 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 blah. You could say all that. And I don't have a quarrel with that. I have a quarrel with the hypocrisy. You can't claim to be basing yourself on international law, but cherry pick the law for what suits you, what works for you, but then ignore the part that doesn't work for you. That to me is hypocritical. And I try as best as I can not to be hypocritical, to be consistent in what I argue, to be logically coherent in what I argue, so that I can try to persuade everybody on the basis of reason, logic, and evidence. It's very easy to persuade people if you're a hypocrite, if you're only talking to the choir, people who already agree with you. But the moment you go before a broad public, which can think for itself and is not yet persuaded, you can't convince anybody if you're being transparently hypocritical. So as a personal thing, I don't like to be a hypocrite. And as a political thing, it's completely ineffective. Having said that, there is no BDS now. You see, in my opinion, Israel is very clever. It's very clever. Do you know why why you know about BDS? Do you know why you know about it? It's not because there are campaigns on campus supporting BDS anymore. It's not because there's pressure being exerted on Israel. The only reason you know about BDS now is because Israel loves BDS. For Israel, they claim every critic of Israel is really being manipulated by BDS, and that BDS wants to destroy Israel. That's what Israel claims. And so it gets to delegitimize, to suppress all criticism of Israel by claiming all the criticism is BDS. And so, as all of you know, every time the question of Israel comes up, and it's critics. What does critics say? What does Israel say? Its critics, they're all BDS, BDS, BDS. There is no BDS. It's not true. There is no BDS.
But
they
isn't there?
use it just like they use the Hamas rockets. There were no Hamas rockets. If you had finished the tape at the beginning that you played of me, I would go on to say there are no rockets. It's just a fantasy.
The 5,000 rockets, 2,000 rockets, and 5,000 mortar rounds. Yeah.
It's more dangerous for me to walk on the boardwalk of Coney Island, where I live, on the 4th of July. It's more dangerous for me to walk on that boardwalk on the 4th of July than to be in Israel and being attacked by the bottle rockets. There are no bottle rockets. The only reason one house was destroyed is that probably the bottle rocket hit the boiler room. That's why. There are no rockets. There are no rockets, but Israel uses the rockets every time it goes on a massacre or murder spree in Gaza. And it does the same thing with the BDS. It keeps shouting and shouting, BDS, they want to destroy us. They don't want to recognize us. They want a second Holocaust. They love the BDS. It's just being used.
Well, I was going to ask you this about BDS. Isn't there, like, I can't remember the woman. There was a woman, I believe she was Palestinian. She was a teacher, and she had to sign an agreement that she wouldn't be part of BDS. And Abby Martin recently, I think it was a year or so ago, had a speaking engagement canceled because she had to sign something saying that she wasn't going to say anything negative about Israel.
Before we continue, can someone state the definition of BDS for our audience who are not familiar with the acronym?
It's just the acronym for boycotts, divestment, and sanctions, meaning encouraging the boycott of Israel or boycott of its settlements in the West Bank, divestment, or sanctions, basically modeled after what was called at the time the anti-apartheid sanctions movement.
Let me ask you, do you believe that Israel is worthy of boycott, divestment, and sanctions?
I was very active in the South anti-apartheid sanctions movement. I mean, I can even tell you the slogans to this day. Bowen, you can't hide. William Bowen was the president of Princeton. Bowen, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide. I remember everything very vividly. You can ask one of the lead activists, brilliant guy and a very impressive guy, Larry Hamm from New Jersey. I suspect some of you might know him. He heads up the organization POP, People Organized for Progress. Yeah, he was the leader back then. We were, I would say, fair enough to say we were good friends. He went by a different name back then. It was Adimu Changa. He was a kind of, you'd call it surrogate son of Amiri Baraka. And Baraka had re-Christianed his name, Adimu Changa, and then he restored his birth name, Larry Hamm. So I was very active. How can I support it in the case of South Africa and not in the case of Israel? It's a perfectly legitimate tactic. I have no problem with that. I had a problem with the platform.
Okay, so for clarification, you agree that the state of Israel is worthy of boycott, divestment, and sanctions, but you have a problem with the platform of the BDS organization.
Listen, I'm going to even say something bigger. I think most countries in the world are worthy of boycott, divestment, and sanctions, not least my own country. Then you have to evaluate whether the tactic can work, how do you apply the tactic. There are all sorts of other issues. But as a matter of principle, why should Israel be immune from a tactic that's applicable everywhere else? That doesn't make any sense at all. Boycotts are a legitimate form of political expression. Sanctions are a legitimate form of political expression. Divestment is a legitimate form of political expression. So how can Israel be immune from those legitimate forms of political expression? It's just crazy.
I think you made a very important clarification that I'm surprised no one has asked you before at all.
No,
they've painted you as a anti-BDS, anti-Israel spokesman.
No,
but the thing is, though, the clarification you've made is very important and helpful.
Pascal, I'm an older man now. I can even say I'm an old man now, and I'm not going to defer to sensibilities if I don't feel that the sensibilities are deserving of being deferred to. The whole thing is kind of laughable. Can you tell me one other person in the United States who, because of his support of the Palestinians, has been unemployed for 15 years? I lost my job in 2007. I was not only unemployed, I wasn't just unemployed, I was unemployable, which is very different. Unemployed means there's a possibility at some point you may find work. There was no possibility. I could not, speaking to Mr. Prescott, I tried to volunteer even in charter schools. A friend of mine, he's one of the world's leading biologists, Robert Trivers, and his daughter is the principal of a charter school in East Harlem. I asked Trivers, I went to see her school, and I said, I'll volunteer to teach a senior class in high school, a senior class. I'll teach, whatever topic you would like. No, because they Google my name. And when you Google my name, what do you get? 40,000 websites saying he's a Holocaust denier, and another 40,000 saying he's a terrorist supporter. So you can imagine, I understood the principal's dilemma. She hires me, and then I have a reputation for being a good teacher. I think I could say that without sounding boastful. The student goes home and says, "Ma, I have a great teacher. Oh, he's such a great teacher. Oh, really? What's his name? Norman Finkelstein. Oh, Norman, let's Google him. Oh my God, he's a Holocaust denier." So, that's her dilemma. Okay? So I've been unemployed for 15 years. 15 years. I don't want to be dramatic about it, but I'm going to be factual about it. It's very hard for 15 years to get up in the morning each morning and not know what to do with yourself, to justify your existence, to give you a purpose, at least for that day. Okay, I got to go to work. I got to prepare a lecture. I got to grade papers. I got to attend a departmental meeting. But for 15 years, I got up. I just stared at the white wall. Not easy. And then it's funny. I get accused of being a liberal Zionist, of being an apologist for Israel. It's funny. You have to laugh, don't you think? I don't see why any of you aren't laughing.
I don't see how somebody can say. I don't see how somebody can call you an apologist for Israel. That's.
Yeah, because I criticize BDS, and that's the cult of the moment.
That's
BDS.
Yeah.
BDS is just BLM. It's one of those hip, chic, radical acronyms. I support BDS. I support BLM. But you know how they support it? I'll tell you how they support it. People won't like to hear it, but I'll say it. So Mark Lamont Hill, big supporter of the Palestinians, big supporter of BDS. And he goes to the UN. He's invited to the UN to speak. And he gives his talk. And he uses the expression, Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. A common slogan that used to be shouted, meaning from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, meaning we're getting rid of Israel. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. And he's very militant. You know, Mark Lamont Hill, he's a real radical, real militant, unlike that guy Finklestein, you know, the liberal Zionist. So Mark Lamont Hill, to his misfortune, though I'm quite glad it happened, he got called out on it. All the Jewish organizations get on his case.
Yeah.
And what does he do? Go back and see what he does. He says, I didn't mean Israel should disappear. I'm all for two states. I never meant what I said. Yeah, Pascal, go and look. That's the radicals. The moment, because, you know, he got cancellations. He got canceled from CNN and he got canceled from somewhere else. I can't remember where. The moment they have to pay a price, they're such grovelers, such sycophants, such bootlickers. Oh. Did I do that? I accepted the price. And you know why I accepted the price? Listen up, guys. Mm-hmm. And guys, I include women. I don't know. That's how, okay, guys.
We're all good. We're all good.
Offensive. So,
we're all good.
Okay. So, you know why? I'll tell you why. Because when I was like 18, when I was 18, I can still remember now. I sat in my bookstore of my college, and there was a book by a guy named Eric Bentley. And it was the collections of testimonies of people before the McCarthy trial, you know, the McCarthy era, in the McCarthy era, before the House Un-American Activities Committee. And I can tell you now, I see in my mind's eye, I'm reading Paul Robeson's testimony, okay? And Paul Robeson said, they said to him, you know, Mr. Robeson, you love Russia so much. Why don't you go back there? And he said, because my grandfather was a slave. I'm a slave. Excuse me, my father was a slave. And I want a piece of the American pie like everybody else. And then they kept hounding him and hounding him and hounding him. And he said, one of the quotes I carried with me till this day, I will not retreat 1,000th part of 1 inch. I will not retreat 1,000th part of 1 inch. And he paid the price. His income in 1949 was $200,000, which was quite a lot of money back then. 1950, it was $6,000. He was completely blacklisted. As you know, his name was removed from all the record books. He was he was by any reckoning an exceptional, extraordinary human being. And I internalized that. I would never, unless I'm wrong. If you show me I'm wrong, the dignified thing to do is to say, I made a mistake. But to be browbeaten, do you know what's his name? Langston Hughes. You know what Langston Hughes did before the McCarthy hearing? He said, if you find anything in my books in support of communism, you should burn them. He told the McCarthy to burn his books if he finds anything in support of communism. And then I see Robeson. I see Du Bois. You should read the last chapter of Du Bois's autobiography. The last chapter of his last autobiography, he had 3. The last chapter, the last one, he talks how Everyone betrayed him. Everyone walked out on him. He talked about how at his birthday party, nobody showed up. Except, to his credit, E. Franklin Frazier. E. Franklin Frazier stuck with him till the end, you know? But otherwise, completely abandoned. And he describes it in like 5 pages. Very sad, painful to read. And then I look at Mark Lamont Hill. He loses 1 or 2 contracts. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I support 2 states. And they tell me, I'm the liberal Zionist. They're the radicals. Very radical. Patrice, they're all so full of crap. The trained Marxist.
Norman, I want to ask you a question on the 2-state solution. Now, what about those who are supporters of Palestinians and Palestinians themselves, and even particularly some of the Muslim community who say that Israel is a state that was created under the auspices of Zionism in 1947 for over 1,000 years under the state or the nation state of Palestine? Jews and Muslims lived there in peace. Why can't we go back to this, the pre-Zionist existing state of Palestine, 1-state solution where Jews are allowed to live freely and democratically with Palestinians and basically neutralize the state of Israel, but still allow Jews to live there freely with Palestinians as they did for over 1,000 years? What is your position on that?
Pascal, I'm an old-fashioned communist with a small c. And the world, we envisaged was a world with 1 state. The international shall be the human race. I really believed, I still do. I believe it now more than when I was a child. Because in the modern world, you can see just how small the planet is. It's just a pebble. It's not even a pebble. It's a grain of sand spinning in the universe. So forget about Israel and Palestine being 1 state. There's no problem confronting humanity now that can be solved in the nation-state level. Can climate change be solved in the nation-state level? Can the world refugee problem can be solved in the nation-state level? Can the problem that we're confronting in the advanced capitalist world, with the capitalist system having broken down, can that be solved on the nation-state level? So logically, rationally, we should have 1 state. But there's a problem. What is logical and rational on a piece of paper is not necessarily what is logical and rational when it comes to people and when it comes to politics. So you have to look, if you're serious about politics, you have to look at political possibility, not at some abstract level of everybody living happily together with everybody else. I think that's a beautiful vision. I still find somewhat inspiring John Lennon's Imagine. I do. But that's a poetic statement. It's not a political statement. If you ask me for rational, here's rational. I'll tell you rational. The U.S. stole 2/3 of Mexico. There are 30 million Mexicans who live in the United States. The Mexican economy is totally dependent on the remittances from Mexicans living in the U.S. So rationally, how should we solve the immigration question with Mexico? Well, the answer is obvious. We should solve it by eliminating the border. 30 million Mexicans live here. We stole 2/3 of Mexico. Mexico's economy is dependent on remittances from Mexicans living here. We should eliminate it. Now I ask you, Pascal, that all makes not only perfectly rational sense, it makes perfect historical sense. Okay? Is politically that a possibility?
Not when you have 800. Not with the United States having 800 military bases all over the world and being the lead imperialist country on the planet. No.
Right. It's not possible. Politically desirable, yes. Rational, yes. But politics is about given the distribution of power, which you just described, given the distribution of power, what is possible now or in the foreseeable future? That's what politics is about. So for me, it's not a political question when you ask me something like that. It's a poetical question. It's about your feelings, about your desires, which obviously have a place in your political being, but they can't be the foundation. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I'm just inquiring because I want to clarify the position. That's all I'm saying. I'm not making an advocacy either way. I'm trying to present the options to you, have you clarify them, and we come to a clarity on what your positions are. And I'm glad you're doing that, and I appreciate the conversation, and I think it's very good. But I have more questions. So, what are the facts?
Do you mind, Pascal? I would. I'm of course grateful that you're prepared, but. No, and I would like to hear from the other people. You know,
that's a good point.
Well, I wanted to jump in with a question. I mean, I don't necessarily have much to say because compared to probably most people here, I'm ignorant on this topic. But just to fast forward a little bit to just more recent events, could you talk about like how Israel and the United States' relationship to Israel factored into the Iran nuclear deal? Both the formation of it and then Trump pulling out of it, and then where that all stands now. How is Israel a factor in all of that?
Well, it's a very interesting question because there is, among parts of the left, there's an assumption that Israel controls U.S. foreign policy. But the Iran issue is very revealing of how that's not fully the case. Iran was obviously a national security issue for Israel, for the U.S. It's a serious issue, Iran. Iran is a formidable power. It's not a joke. It has a rich civilization, and it's a coherent, powerful state. So and because of the oil reserves. And so that's a significant political issue for the U.S. Now, what happened? As you recall, in 2016, Benjamin Netanyahu did everything he could to sabotage the agreement that was in the making then. He carried on exactly how he is, an obnoxious Jewish supremacist. Well, it's a fact. His father was just a disgusting human being, a historian at Cornell University. This typical, there's a type. I know this is essentializing.
And real quick, can you clarify, what is Israel's interest in sabotaging that deal?
Yeah, well, I'll get to that. In any case, Benjamin Netanyahu, he barges in our U.S. Congress to tell President Obama the facts. You know, like, we spend trillions of dollars on defense, but we need the Jewish genius to tell us what we don't know. And he barges into our U.S. Congress. By the way, since this is a show oriented towards African Americans, he would never have done that with Jimmy Carter. He would never have done that with Bill Clinton. You know, they would just pick up the phone and say, "Excuse me, I'm the president of the United States. Get the fuck out of here." It was the typical Jewish racist supremacist that he does it with Obama. I'm no fan of Obama. I find him loathsome. However, it was pure racism. You could say both things at once, which is what I was trying to say earlier about Glenn Lurie. I don't like Obama, but it was clear what Netanyahu was doing. He did it because Obama was black. You know,
yeah, and that's just something
Obama,
too.
Netanyahu grew up in the United States. His father was this Neanderthal. You know, where black people are Schwarzes. I guess Prescott knows what that is. Maybe your father never tell you. You know, it was like,
I grew up in New York City, my man. I know exactly what the terms mean.
right.
Don't let me tell you what my retorts are either.
Right. You know, he's a Schwarzer. And he carries on like that. But the point being, he comes to the U.S. Congress. They mobilize the Jewish lobby, AIPAC. AIPAC spends, I think, about $30 million to try to block the deal. Nothing happened. It was a U.S. national interest. They don't care what Israel wants. They will do what Israel wants when it's not a critical interest at stake. Where, say, like with the Cuba lobby, the U.S. went along with the Cuba lobby because there wasn't a critical interest at stake in Cuba, even when Cuba was, wanting to be really within the U.S. orbit. So the lobby has power, but the power ends where a U.S. national interest steps in. And it was a very good question because the same thing is happening right now. Biden is making clear, I'm signing the deal. Israel is hysterical, doing everything it can to sabotage the deal, murdering this scientist, murdering that general, blowing up the nuclear reactor. It's obvious what they're doing. They're trying to sabotage the deal, to create a war and sabotage the deal. But the U.S., I've been following lately the negotiations. It's not even telling Israel what they're doing. It's like, but out. No, and one of the reasons why, it's very interesting. One of the reasons why is because they just signed a $600 billion deal with China, the Iranians. Probably the most significant political event in the Middle East since the end of World War II. The Chinese are quietly stepping into U.S. turf. It's a very funny thing. It's a very funny thing to watch. You know why? Because Trump and Pompeo, they tore up the agreement and they were walking around. We're going to make the Iranians crawl. We're going to make them beg us. We're going to make them do whatever we want. And guess what happened? The Iranians wanted to be in the Western sphere of influence. The technology, everything. They think that for them, the West is still where the action is. Guess what happened? They turned to China. It is so like, imagine Trump, Pompeo, they open up the morning newspaper, they hear about this there, they're thinking, holy fuck, we just lost Iran. Yeah, they lost Iran. And that's why now Biden is trying to resume the agreement. They're getting worried. There's a problem here. Iran had an option. And they signed a 25-year deal. And it's a very different thing, because they signed the deal, $600 billion of investment from China, and Iran sells oil at a cut rate price to China. Okay, that's the deal. Now, here's the thing. Israel always carries on like, oh, we can blow up any country at once. That's what it does. The Europeans, what happens is Israel blows up Gaza every 2 or 3 years. And what do you think the Europeans do? They step in and rebuild it again. So they build the hospitals, they build the schools, they build the infrastructure. Israel blows it up, and then the Europeans step in and rebuild it. That's Israel's modus operandi. There's a definition of chutzpah. Chutzpah is the Jewish word for nerve. And one of the definitions is you defecate in front of somebody's house, and then you knock on the door and ask for toilet paper. And that's how Israel carries on with Gaza. We blow it up, and the Europeans have to rebuild it. We blow it up, we have to rebuild it. But guess what? China is making a big investment in Iran. You're not going to blow it up. That's a big problem for Israel. You don't get to blow up Iran anymore because the Chinese have invested in it, and they'll make it very clear. you don't blow it up. That's our investment.
And let me add this to this. Someone brought up in the chat the fact that right now, as we speak, Joe Biden is acknowledging the Armenian genocide.
Mm-hmm.
What is all this for, in your opinion?
You know, I haven't followed, because I got immersed in this book. I haven't been able to follow that particular thing. Obviously, it has something to do with Turkey, but I don't know what the current U.S.-Turkish relations are. You know, Israel doesn't recognize the Armenian genocide because of Turkey. Or it didn't until recently. Maybe it just did. I can't remember. But whenever you hear Armenia, you have to think Turkey, because it's the Turks who deny it, and the countries walk on eggshells about recognizing it because how it's going to offend the Turkish government. Now, maybe Israel did just recognize it. I've forgotten.
And Marcus, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think that just between the relationships between China and Iran, and also just China building out its influence throughout, Belt and Road, and even it's kind of amazing. They had this climate summit, top 20 nations, or some of the top 20 largest nations, and each head, got to say their piece. And Xi Jinping boastfully says we are, the Belt and Road. It's now the Green Belt and Road Initiative, and it's kind of this interesting thing view, because I was like, the deal that Iran and China signed was just like a few weeks ago. I haven't been able to see any details that have come of which is like what specifically China will be investing in, but I think it's got to be, I feel that the United States, and even when we discuss things, right, of like Iran or these other countries are knocking on their doorsteps, but they're not in Canada, they're not in Mexico, they're on the doorsteps of our imperialist, footprint that we've spread across the globe.
It's interesting to watch how they operate. They're very low key. The U.S. carries on with the boasting, we put Iran in their place. They don't do that. They're just very slowly, very quietly, like moving pieces on the chessboard. And there's something about the confidence and the not feeling the need to boast and gloat as they make their way. It's very interesting what happened with the COVID. If you lived in the United States, as all of you do and I do, you would never know China had developed a vaccine on its own. Their vaccine, obviously there have been many vaccines. You'd never know. China now, if you talk to Chinese, it's completely back to normal. There's no hint of a pandemic anymore. And what's the most amazing thing to watch is we here in the West, we're so self-confident, so arrogant. Nobody even asks the question, how did they do it? It's 1.5 billion people.
We only ask how they pay for it.
We're just a province of China. We're a province.
Mm.
And 1.5 billion people, it's completely back to normal. They got rid of it. You'll never see, if you read the newspapers, have you ever seen an op-ed or an article, how did the Chinese do it and why can't we?
The only thing I've seen is that the Chinese vaccine is not supposed to be as good, quote unquote.
Yes, that, and they'll always talk about the authoritarian element as having been played a factor, which it did. It did. You can't deny the fact that they were very efficient. They were very efficient. And the truth, in my opinion, and I haven't studied China in a long time. I was a Maoist as a young man. And
someone asked about that in the chat.
Asked about that. What moved you away from Maoism?
Van Jones.
That's, when I was growing up, it was Mao Zedong, live like him, dare to struggle, dare to win. It's true. I had posters all over my house, all over my room. Socialism is advancing from victory to victory. Long live the dictatorship of the proletariat. And once somebody arbitrarily shot a bullet in our house. Nothing, no assassination, just somebody shot a bullet. So my mother, terrified, she called the police. The police come. And then, oh my God, I forgot, they're going to go to Norman's room. They're going to see all these posters. So they go into my room, and my mother, she's very quick on her feet. You see the police, they're seeing these posters, not that they knew what the dictatorship of the proletariat was, or socialism is advancing to victory, but they obviously had a perplexed and maybe a little bit troubled look in their face. And my mother turns to them, and without missing a beat, she says, "My son likes Chinese people."
I wanted to ask you, Norman, what do you think about the way anti-Semitism was used to neutralize Jeremy Corbyn in his British political?
What do you? They try to use it on Bernie Sanders too.
They never got to that point.
Well, they used it on him, didn't they? Didn't they use it on
They
Norman?
used it on Ilhan Omar, the people who surrounded him. But they never quite got to him because it wasn't yet the general election. If it got to the general election, yes, they would have played that card against him. Whether it would have been effective, in Corbyn, it was a disaster because he wasn't Jewish. It was probably the most cynical political ploy in modern politics. It really was. I would say it's probably the most cynical. I wrote a lot about, I talked a lot about it. I was begging Corbyn, don't go down this road, don't apologize. Because it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. They want to stop you. They're just playing the anti-Semitism card. So don't apologize, you're wasting your time. Because they don't want to apologize. They don't want you to apologize for anti-Semitism. They don't want you to run for office. They want to stop you. So what are you apologizing for? I don't know why he did it. Everybody said it's just because he's a nice guy, and maybe it's true. Maybe it's true. He's not confrontational as a person. And so he got wiped up. Now, would he have won in the absence of that campaign? Probably not, but it's one of those, politics is mostly flukes. I mean, we wish it were calculated, and we wish you could predict everything, but it's flukes. Why did Trump lose the last election? A fluke. Out of thin air came COVID. If it weren't for COVID, who would have voted for Biden? He was an Egyptian mummy.
Damn.
But it was a fluke. It was COVID. It was COVID that flipped it against Trump. And with Corbyn, it was this thing called Brexit, whether the British were going to exit from the European Union. Not worth going into the details, but it was Brexit that undid Corbyn. What happened with the anti-Semitism thing was countries like strong leaders. They like strong leaders, for better or for worse, probably for worse. And Corbyn kept apologizing and apologizing and apologizing. And he came across as so weak and so lacking in backbone that if you looked at the polls, I followed it very closely. If you looked at the polls, they kept describing him as a weak leader, as feeble. And that was an element. It was an element. But the key thing was this issue over Brexit, exiting from the European Union. That's politics. It was a fluke. Here it was COVID. If it weren't for COVID, I think Biden would have been slaughtered. I mean, can you imagine the debates between Trump and Biden? It would have been a catastrophe.
Let's go.
Yeah, well, I had a follow-up question that again, what in your upcoming book on cancel culture, Norman, you discuss how cancel culture is not a new phenomenon, and how as much as it's being decried by voices on the right today, they, the right, oftentimes were the ones most aggressive in canceling people. For example, like during the McCarthy era. What are the contemporary phenomena that are causing the cries of cancel culture, in your opinion? And do you see a particular value to this discourse amongst the ruling class?
Well, I'm going to have to end this soon because you don't want me to expire, and you will have to bear witness to the fact that I died on your program.
Oh man, that's views. That's some Geraldo shit right there, man. The show that killed Finklestein.
It's the only thing that will save us from being canceled. You know,
We
so take one for the team, or you know.
Geraldo was. I used to work with kids in a pretty tough neighborhood in Chelsea. Chelsea's now rich, but the public housing there, I worked with kids after school, and Geraldo lived there. He was Jerry Rivers. He made the leap to Geraldo Rivera. You know who I worked with? I worked with Whoopi Goldberg's mother, Emma.
Oh no shit.
Very nice woman. Very sorry what happened to her daughter, but she was actually a extremely modest, nice woman. That's when Whoopi was doing the Broadway shows, and back in that era, they advertised the shows with these posters. You remember they used to whitewash on the wall, and so she was all over the place. And her mother, carried on like, I'm Emma, very nice person. The thing about identity politics and cancel culture in general is, in my opinion, it's a misnomer. You see, I don't think it's part of the left. In my view, identity politics has become an adjunct, a part of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is in transition. It used to be mostly white working class party. It's now becoming an identity politics-based party. And one of its instruments, one of its adjuncts, is identity politics. And you could see it. It's very interesting to watch. And you all, and myself, we got to watch it in real time. So what happened? If you look at the elections, if you look at the primaries, the very same people who are the stalwarts of identity politics, the radical, the thisist and thatist, fighting male supremacy, fighting racism, fighting misogyny, holding high pride in their race. Where did you see them? Where were they featured? They were featured in the New York Times. That's kind of strange. The New York Times is now a radical newspaper. The New York Times, it was calling de Blasio, our mayor, a racist. It was denouncing the police. I'm thinking to myself, New York Times? Is this the same New York Times that I know? And they were featured on MSNBC. Joy Reid, all of them. But here's the thing. The very same people who are the stalwarts of identity politics were the very same people who were called out to stop Bernie Sanders. They were the ones who were called out to stop Bernie Sanders. Look at it. Watch what happened. You remember in 2016 when John Lewis came out and he said, I never saw Bernie in the civil rights movement. I saw Bill and Hillary. You remember in 2020?
I think civil rights, I always think Bill Clinton.
Yeah, 100.
I don't know about you.
Bill Clinton civil rights because he played the saxophone. So that's what
on Arsenio.
Right. They brought out Whoopi Goldberg in 2020. He's on The View. She says to him, she snarls at him, when are you going to drop out of this race? Cool, hip, Whoopi. Cool, hip, Whoopi. When are you going to drop out of this race? She snarls at him. Joy Reid. She brings out a body language reader.
Oh yeah,
body language reader.
Talk about anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
real, though.
It's all Jewy like.
Right.
They brought out all the identity politics people to derail the Bernie locomotive. That's their job. That's the quid pro quo. You get a position in the party or the party apparatus, you get quite nice perks. But if there's a socialist, leftist class threat, your job is to play the identity card to crush it. They're not left. They're not the left. They're not progressive. They are hacks for the party to keep that base, some of which is working class, the part that Bernie mobilized, to keep it in place, to crush it. That's what they did. Hey guys, this is not theory. We watched it. You watched it in real life time. Who were the people? You can disagree with me. And Angela, I get worried that we may have developed an enmity here. And I'd like you to get to know me.
I think Angela was shaking her head in agreement.
Okay. What did they do with the black reparations? Who they go after? You remember what Ta-Nehisi Coates did?
Ooh.
Bernie has a problem with reparations.
Yep.
Everybody, they brought out all the big people to crush Bernie.
No, that was an agreement that you saw, Mr. Finkelstein, Dr. Finkelstein. I was agreeing with you.
Yeah.
And one thing,
I gotta call him Norm.
That's what you call a moment of truth. Because you will remember, up until South Carolina, it looked like Bernie was going to win. And they were panicking.
And also,
remember Nevada.
And then they pulled out the big guns. Reliable Barack, after South Carolina, makes the phone calls to Buttigieg, to Klobuchar. Super Tuesday is coming up tomorrow. Get out of the race.
Right.
Who was he serving?
And one interesting thing recently, y'all probably saw this, where still long after the fact, Clyburn feels the need to say, I don't know why they're talking about Biden being like FDR. FDR wasn't good for black people. I'd rather them say he was like Truman.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I mean, not just the historical inaccuracy of that, but it's like, why does he feel the need to destroy the legacy of FDR? And we all know, everyone here knows about, yes, we know how the New Deal was limited, but again, it's amazing. They want to destroy the historical memory so that in your mind, anything FDR, anything social democratic is racist.
Yeah.
Because, Truman was an anti-racist hero, when he dropped that atomic bomb, that was real.
Anything that benefits the working class is racist.
And you could,
It's funny you should say that, because that's exactly what Ibram X. Kendi does in Stand from the Beginning. He attacks the New Deal and he praises Truman. You know what Du Bois had to say about Truman? Du Bois said, No different than Hitler.
Damn.
Yes, that's what he said.
And that was towards the end of Du Bois's life, where he definitely got very radical. Let's also add that.
And there's a very strong case. I mean, Truman kicked off that counter-revolution against the left, and especially prominent black socialists and communists.
The existence of Truman on the ticket was stamping down the left.
Right.
It was him that went after them. And they praise Truman and they attack Roosevelt. You know? But that's the thing. That's the thing. You know how they say in a moment of truth, everything kind of lights up. You see it. And we saw it in 2020. Yeah. That burning locomotive, it did look before South Carolina that he was going to win. And you saw people panicking in real time on television. What are we going to do to stop him? What are we going to do to stop him?
That's the reason why Truman even was vice president and was able to take on power, right? Truman wasn't FDR's vice president until the party came in and said, no, we're going to force him down your throat right on the edge of death's door. You know, we know that you're not going to stop winning. We also know that you're not going to live forever. So go ahead, run again. But you don't get to have your VP pick, and I can't remember the dude's name right now, but
Henry Wallace.
Well, Henry Wallace, yes. He was way more
He
left.
was very socialist.
He was he was an actual socialist, left than FDR. Absolutely talked against the nuclear proliferation. Yeah. And they're the bombs would have never ever been dropped. And that's what we have to think here. I kind of scare myself now because you look at the ramifications of the Democratic Party shoving Truman down our throat instead of Wallace, and now what are the ramifications going to be after Biden has been shoved down our throat? And that's where I start thinking of South China Sea, all of the young people that won't be able to go to your local McDonald's or your ice cream shop. They will be replaced by the little bit of automation, and then they're going to say, hey, well, we have all these young people that have nothing to do, and China's popping off. Hey, why not have another draft? It's an economic boom.
Right. But
I just want to jump in and apologize to everybody because I live in South Carolina. So let me issue a formal apology for Jim Clyburn. I apologize about the job that was done here.
I don't agree. I don't agree with all the interpretations about South Carolina. They say African Americans tend to vote defensively.
Yeah.
They prefer a moderate candidate because an extreme candidate they're afraid can't win. Mm-hmm. And then it's going to bring in a reactionary candidate. You know, those explanations. But there's one basic problem with that explanation. There's one problem that stares you in the face. And you're from South Carolina. So I'll ask you the question. If Clyburn and Obama had endorsed Bernie and not Biden, who would black people have voted for? Excuse me?
You already know the answer to that
Exactly.
question.
Right.
You already know.
Exactly. So it wasn't that they're conservative. Because if if Clyburn and Obama had supported Bernie, he would have won. They were the problem.
Right. And
they were the problem. They're there to stop a Bernie-type insurgency. That's the quid pro quo for the identity politics. We'll put you in high places, but when push comes to shove, you got to do your job. And you know what? They all do it. They all do it because you want to give up. You want to give up those perks. You want to give up that power. Who wants to give it up? Who wants to give it up? Kennedy got $10 million from the CEO of Twitter. Colors his book deals with Warner. Who's ready to
just so you guys know, the CEO of Twitter took my laptop back. So that's what that motherfucker did to me. Kennedy gets 10 million and I got to return my laptop.
10 million. And for them, it's nothing. That's the thing. In my opinion, the main lesson that our ruling class learned from the 1960s is why kill them? Just buy them off. Everybody's
Right.
got a price.
This is what we talked about
Everybody's
last
got a
night.
price. Just buy them off.
We were having a conversation.
What's $10 million for Dorsey? You know what Twitter, you know what Kenny is for Dorsey. You know what he is?
Cover.
As I say in my book, I say he's a fashion statement and he's an insurance policy.
Yep.
Fashion statement comes out with the braids, looks real cool. White people love that. Liberals. That's why Cory Booker could never win.
Damn.
Because his name was Cory Booker.
Oh, and he got his bald head's not exotic enough.
The smartest career move Barack Obama ever made, the smartest, is when he changed his name from Barry to Barack. Because
actually, I would say marrying Michelle Obama was the smartest move.
That's a long story. No,
Part 2 in the last episode.
It was a political move because he was living with a Korean woman. They were in love.
Was she hot?
Yeah, she was. She still loves him, or maybe she loves him now because he became president. She's a professor. She teaches anthropology at Oberlin. In any event, they told him point blank, if you don't marry a black woman, you're dead in Chicago politics. That's what they told him. It's all documented. And he dumped her. Everything for Barack Obama is a career move. You don't understand that. People don't want to hear it.
It was manufactured.
Obama was as religious as Karl Marx. If you listen to his friends, every single one of his friends says the same thing. Obama doesn't have a religious bone in his body. And then he knew in Chicago, he said it. He said himself in one of his speeches, he says, the American people are religious people. That's just a fact. Gotta discover religion. I recently read a book of his speeches. I was shocked. About 90% of his speeches are about God and grace. I'm serious. And here's a guy who every single one of his friends says, this guy doesn't have a religious bone in his body.
At least he didn't call it 2 Corinthians like Trump did, though.
Okay. So then he changed his name to Barack, and white people love that. And that's the thing with Kennedy. You want to get an extra $10 million? Here, Angela, Pascal, Prescott, it's a little hard, Mr. Myers, and the other fellow. All you have to do is throw an X in your name. No, it's true.
I think the real question is, how will white voters
stick in an X? He became Ibram X. Kendi, and he's chill. And white woke people love it.
The real question is...
Wait, Pascal, you said you're from Brooklyn, from New York. You don't know
Queens,
that?
man, Queens. Don't
You
mess
don't
me
know
up.
that? You know how you used to be able to tell a fake white liberal? There's one way always telling a fake white liberal when I was growing up. They always loved jazz. We always loved jazz.
True.
I hate jazz. You know why I hate jazz? Because every time I think jazz, I think those fake white liberals. And now they became, I love Obama. I love Obama. So Kendi, he throws in an X, gets the braids down to his shoulder, and he's a fashion statement for Dorsey. Now I'm cool. I'm chill. I'm down with the hood. I hang with Ibram X. Kendi. And as you said, he's covered. It's a insurance policy. So Kendi will never say anything against him. And what's $10 million to this guy? I mean, it's an insurance policy. Insurance policies cost money. So he throws in $10 million, which for him is like a dime. And he's got his insurance policy. That's how it all works. That's the thing. That's what identity politics is. It's just an insurance policy for the ruling class.
Paul, you got to take off.
Crush any
I
class movement.
I unfortunately have to leave. I just want to end with this, though. The real question is, how will white voters react when Cory Booker's T-Bone runs for president? That's the real. What will happen when T-Bone runs?
For people that don't remember, Cory Booker talking about how
I don't know what that expression means.
Cory Booker talked about how
Corn Pop is the running mate. We're good.
Yeah, he had a Corn Pop-esque story about a guy
like his
named
friend in the
T-Bone.
hood was named T-Bone. Almost certainly this person is fake, but you know,
like these guys can't say they did the dirt. They have to have like, well, I was adjacent to a real stereotypical black man named T-Bone, and he did mad niggerish things.
Right.
That was Obama's shtick. That was Obama's shtick at Harvard Law School. You have all these white bread kids. He comes in, he wears this worn leather jacket. He has the cigarette dangling from his mouth. He comes in as the community organizer. And they're all, the thrill. There's a guy from the hood in our class. And he played it. The thing about Obama is, it's not that Obama's half black that's of interest. It's that he's half white. He grew up, his father wasn't around, his mother was never around. His mother was an anthropologist, and she was always off in Indonesia or elsewhere working for the Ford Foundation. He grew up, his white grandparents raised him. He grew up in Hawaii, and Hawaii is a kind of strange place. It's an inverted prejudice. The only prejudice in Hawaii is against white people. It's an odd thing, Hawaii. So he got to know white people inside out, upside down. He knew exactly what buttons to press. It was intuitive to him. And that was his art. He knew, Obama's art was, he knew how to get white people to feel good about themselves by feeling good about him. How to get white people to feel good about themselves by feeling good about him. That was his art. He knew white people upside down, inside out. And it worked. You should read the stories with Harvard. They're all so excited. Oh my God, somebody real from the hood.
Did you see? So there's a series on Barack Obama, and my girlfriend and I are trying to find something to watch with the child, and she's going through the Netflix shows. And the thing, I don't know if you know, if you're scrolling through and you go over a show title and you try to read what it's about, now it plays a trailer, right? So it's playing a trailer of this Barry series. There's like a series or a movie about a young Barack Obama. And there's a scene where the young Barack Obama is saying to his mom, he's like, "I'm the only black man in all of my classes at Harvard." I'm like, haven't you been kind of the only cat around? You lived in Indonesia. I mean, how many Negroes was with you living in Indonesia and Hawaii?
He only hung around white people before Harvard Law School. There were 2.5 years community organizing. Anyone who knows anything about community organizing, 2.5 years, you haven't even gotten your feet wet. Because the whole thing about community organizing is you have to build trust in the community. They have to believe that you're not just another hustler coming in. And that takes a long time. That takes a very long time for people to trust you. 2.5 years is not community organizing. In any case, he played that shtick of the community organizer at Harvard, and they went for it. The stories are just actually kind of funny when you read. He went to Columbia. His two girlfriends, he had two significant relationships. One was a white woman from a quite established family. One was a South Korean. Now, the South Korean, it's interesting. South Koreans, I'm afraid you're going to attack me, Pascal, but I'm going to essentialize.
Pascal is a huge fan of Sandro.
They tend to be insular and racist. Yes, and insular and racist. Her father, the girlfriend's father, was a general in the army, in the South Korean army, or a senior officer. I think general, but I could be wrong about that. A senior officer. They got along fine. They got along fine. There was no self-awareness of being black. You know who made him black? The Reverend Wright in Chicago. Took him under his wing.
Who he pushed her back against when he said that about white women.
You know, everybody talks about his famous race speech. You know what his race speech was? He took his grandmother, he took his pastor, he took the woman who raised him, his grandmother, he took his pastor, who was his surrogate father, and he took both of them and threw them under the bus. That's what he did to get them elected. Get him elected. That's the interesting thing about the race speech. He had no compunction about throwing his grandmother who raised him and his pastor, who was his surrogate father, threw them both under the bus. That's who he is. Do I think that's terrible? Not really, because that's what most politicians do. You have to be honest about that. So I don't have a problem with that. What I have the problem with is this Obama cult that he can do no evil, that he's better. He's like them all. He's like all of them. Okay, guys. So.
Here I am. Thank you very much.
You're welcome always to visit, but please, no jazz.
These instruments behind me do not play jazz.
And
not play jazz.
So, Angela, a genuine pleasure. I know, for your generation, I can come across harsh. I know that, and abrasive. It's not because of my age. I don't think. It's because I went through so many quote unquote radical phases, only to be disillusioned, only to watch people in whom I invested a lot, and then just see, when I was a kid, a 16-year-old kid, I lived, swore, and breathed by Angela Davis. I mean, to the point that it was complete lunacy, frankly. And I mean, I live in this all-Jewish neighborhood, and I sent out in 1970 Angela Davis Christmas cards. It's like, I was a complete nut. And now when I see Angela in the midst of a global pandemic, in the midst of mass unemployment, in the midst of so much despair, in the midst of, we're on the verge of mass evictions, and I see she comes out with a radical fashion line. A fashion line now?
Sometimes you need to drop your radical scarf line during a pandemic.
A radical, just as I asked Jason last night, go on Google and just enter the name Tamika Mallory and then click on images. Click on images. I asked him to do it last night. You can't tell the difference between her and Diana Ross. The outfits, each different picture, another outfit. Each outfit had to be $10,000. I'm thinking, is that Fannie Lou Hamer? Is that Harriet Tubman? Is that the radical left legacy that I identified with? Do you remember Fannie Lou Hamer at the 1964 convention? She came up with her pocketbook. She put her pocketbook on the table. She was dressed in a very simple black dress. And then I see Tamika Mallory stop in the name of love. I hear a symphony. It disgusts me. It does. What you hear from me is disgust. It is. It's disgust at what's happened, at this sham and scam called identity politics. Respect for people, for their sexual orientation. Hey, I'm kind of a softie inside. Anybody who finds the courage to assert their human dignity, it's a very touching sight for me. I get kind of watery-eyed, teary-eyed. You're asserting your human dignity. And for me, it's the most moving sight. But this is not what it's about. These radical academics with their pronouns, they're just trying to show you how woke they are.
There's something to be said about that.
I said, I'll tell you my pronoun if you tell me how much you earn each year. Well, I'm dead serious. You tell me your income and I'll tell you my pronoun. That's what I want to know. Hey, you think I'm joking? Because they want to show how superior they are, and they can look down on white working class people, privileged. Really? I'm privileged? Oh, yeah, you're real cool. You're real chill. You're really down with your pronouns. But by the way, how much do you make each year? How much do you take in? They don't want to talk about that. That's not chill.
No, I want to.
That's not down.
I just want to clarify. I don't want you to think that, I took issue with.
I like you.
Where you're coming from. I like it. I'm with it.
You spoke your mind, but I'm not the person you might think I am.
I think you're wonderful. We don't have to agree for me to like you, so we're good.
I thought my whole life was, as I said to a friend last night, it was vindicating what was done to my parents' family. And that's about, of course, it's about death, but it's also about human dignity. And that's why I have, sitting right here, if you were in my apartment, I have on my bookshelf, I have a picture of Paul Robeson and a couple other people who played a big role in my life. Because they kept, till their last dying day, they kept their human dignity. In very trying circumstances, because Robeson was a brilliant enough guy. He was a brilliant guy,
Yes.
He graduated in college, All-American football, All-American baseball, All-American basketball, All-American track.
Yep.
He had 16 varsity letters, 16. And he was class valedictorian. And his father was on his back. He had 3 years of Latin, 4 years of Greek. You got to read the classics. You got to read them in the originals. Yes, read about him.
Yeah, no, I got Gerald
He
Horne's
has a very tiny autobiography because he's very modest. It's called Here I Stand. Very tiny. But he talks about that. The importance of excelling at everything, not just at sports, at everything. His father was a pastor, not accepting second best. And Robeson was smart enough to know, for sure, he made some real mistakes with the Soviet Union. He made some errors. And that's not a good feeling, because he supported that cause because he believed in it. He made a mistake. Like I made a mistake. I made a mistake with my Maoism. You make a mistake. And it's a very humiliating thing because they kept saying to him, hey, Khrushchev said Stalin was a monster. What do you think now? That's why they were taunting him during the McCarthy trial. What do you think now? And of course, part of him knew it was true. Part of him knew it was true. He made a mistake. And through it all, he tried to keep his dignity. Very tragic at the end. You know, the last 15 years of his life, he was in seclusion. From 1961, he moved in with his sister, Marion, in Philadelphia. And he was in seclusion. And I read somewhere he was deeply hurt that, and this gets back to the question earlier with me, and people now saying, oh, he doesn't support the Palestinians, he's a liberal Zionist. He wasn't invited to the March on Washington. After all the sacrifices he made. And they didn't invite him, because he was a communist. And he was pained by that. So for me, it's always been about human dignity. Of course, it's about murder, death, and also, which comes before dignity. But it's always been about human dignity. And I deeply respect anyone and everyone who finds the internal courage to assert their equality, their humanity, and their dignity. But then I Googled Tamika Mallory, and what is this?
She's problematic. I'm just gonna say that. Problematic as fuck.
You know, what's going on here? This is not leftist politics. This is just people who they're ghouls and grave robbers, profiteering from the dead, and then getting invited to all these elite circles, the Grammys, the Oscars, and the quid pro quo is, when push comes to shove, they drag you out. When are you going to drop out of the race? She snarls at him. Fills me with disgust. And that's where my, as it were, abrasiveness comes from. As the expression has it, been there, done that, and I'm not going through it again. I'm going to call it as I see it. And you don't like it? Okay, cancel me. But guess what? It's too late. I was already canceled.
Hey, thanks again for coming on, Norm.
Okay.
We want to have you back at some point, probably when the book is done. And we can talk more about the book and also get more into all 75 books you've written.
No, 75 is my book sales.
All right, Norm.
Nice.
Hope you enjoy being on the show, Norman.
You know, I'm at the age where I can't remember when we started.
2.5 hours ago. We was on here for a long ass time. You are the longest guest we've had so far on a Saturday.
Okay, guys. Nice to meet you.
Hey, peace.
Pleasure to meet you.
Peace, Norm. That was Norman Finkelstein. I warned you guys that the show was going to be fire. You people looked at me and commented in the chat, oh, that seems interesting. And I was like, you don't understand. I've been having phone conversations with this man. And he pulls no punches. He is not for the bullshit. And it's going to be an intense call. I think even Pascal was shocked because at some point he probably saw his career literally just die before his eyes. He's like, nigga, I'm working on a book and you are fucking all my shit up with the white people. It's on zero too. I saw Pascal just go. That's why he left for a while, because he was trying to just figure out how to save the show.
Save the book. Well,
Marcus too. They said you're canceled too as well, Marcus.
Well, of course I'm canceled. I need to be canceled. But no, I think especially when he talks about the pronouns thing, that was like something I was like, okay, whenever he gets done talking, this needs to be addressed. I appreciate Angela, you having the strength to just make that happen.
I appreciate. I'm glad. I by the way, I didn't know what Angela was going to say. She just looked like she had something to say, so I just went to her. But I'm actually glad she took the opportunity to lay down that marker, and I think that was an important statement to make. And regardless of what Norm says, I don't believe in essentializing people because it basically limits the capacity to realize the humanity of individuals who may be relegated to a certain space. I mean, whether sociology says it's normal or not, well, sociology has been used for all kinds of horrible things. I just say that members of X community tend to do X, Y, Z, and I leave it there. I don't like to lay blanket statements on anyone, and just categorize them. But
I think at some point it's like, it's just like, well, you're not wrong if you want to use this definition.
No, I mean, listen,
yeah, but like, how does?
Listen, I'm not saying he's wrong. Listen, as a person who comes from a community of immigrants, but my parents are Haitian. I hear my parents all the time speak. This is why I identify. Speak horrible things about Haitian. Oh, Haitian people do this. You can't. Haitian people do that. You can't trust Haitians to do this. And they talk about their own people. So I understand for him as a person who is Jewish, why he will say. I mean, Haitians do it all the time. You would think they hate each other just based on what they say about each other. So I can understand him as a person growing up in a Jewish household with his parents being like, I'm sick of these people, blah, 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 and making those broad statements out of his personal experience and emotional frustration. But I don't think that should be the go-to methodology as a society that we make about categorizing whole collectives of people at all.
I think he speaks in an understanding that like the he said it's like, well, in sociology, this is how we talk, this is how things are understood and said. But and also too, it's like by the time we got to the end of it, when he's talking about the pronouns thing, he's not talking about people expressing, hey, this is what you should address me as. He's talking about a very specific moment, in which case one professor was trying to woke scold him, and that topic happened to be, that. And that's where, from when I was saying that coming in too, was just saying like, listen, like, yeah, you may not be wrong, and this is like a big Lebowski quote. Walter, you're not wrong, you're just an asshole. I'm not saying Norman's an asshole. I'm not saying Norman's an asshole.
No, I get it.
But his language that he uses, he's relegated. I am okay to use it because I'm a sociologist and this is how we speak. But is this message being delivered? Well, I think the fact that we're talking about the language, right, is now.
And it was something, there was people that were kind of upset that the show was being a little derailed. And I was like, look, let's just address this real quick because people need to see how you do this shit properly. Because I don't know if you guys saw, I think it was in North Carolina, where there was a city commission about a development that was coming on. And there was a professor from one of the universities in North Carolina, and she was a doctorate of public health. She's a doctorate in public health. And one of the commissioners on the city council called her by her last name. She goes, doctor. And that was the second time that had happened in the call. The first time the guy apologized, called her doctor. The second time she goes, it's doctor, whatever her last name is. And the guy goes, okay, Miss So-and-so. She goes, it's doctor, whatever my last name is. And the guy goes, yeah, well, the thing it says Sharon. So Sharon.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody wanted their jaw broke.
Did
I say that?
And there's a difference between that over the top assholedness, someone accidentally saying the wrong thing.
But it actually isn't, because all I could think of is anyone who has ever been misgendered simply trying to take a pee in public. And I can't count the times that has happened to me because I don't perform femininity in a way that some people get. They need women to have long hair. So when people try to be reductionist, as someone in the chat was like, these are not things that matter. If it's not your lived, I guess it doesn't fucking matter to you. But I live this, and it is violence when somebody chastises you and humiliates you for trying to go pee at a bathroom. I drive a truck. I have to go to truck stops and to be accosted. And one of these was a man. Well, I guess you are a woman. Motherfucker, you want me to whip it out? Which is what I started to tell him. You need to see it. And even if it wasn't there, mind your motherfucking business. So I understand people, reading the chat, and I understand that people felt like it was a derailing. And I, explain to y'all, I certainly wasn't trying to do that. But at the same time, I think when we're talking about identity, these things come into the room along with all the work that people are doing, and they're not separate. My class issues, my issues as a working class human being come into the room with my race and my gender. I'm not going to cut myself into partitions to make people comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we can move like that. And I also understand where Dr. Finkelstein was coming from about the ways that identity has been weaponized and the way that people are cashing the fuck in on it. He's absolutely on point. It is disgusting. It's embarrassing for people who are actually trying to do this work, and you got these folks pulling in bag. And these are the people that they're looking at. So that's where I was coming from with that.
I think that what we have, right, is that we're looking at two types of identity politics. We have neoliberal identity politics or identity reductionism, and we have people who are rooting how their identity is denied resources in political economy, i.e. their blackness rendering them to the reserve army of labor, i.e. black women being i.e. working class black women. So there is a classed mechanism or methodology of how identity is being weaponized by liberal elites to basically neutralize a working class coalition of all people addressing the materiality of their personal conditions in a way that highlights how, even though, yes, all of us are all being materially ground to powder as working class and poor people, there are differentiations in degrees because of the way in which these ideas are utilized in capitalism, whether they be gender or race or even sexual orientation. And I think that the best way to push back against people confusing when black folk talk about how certain programs may not address key issues. Well, we're rooting our dispute not in just being black, we're rooting it in how our race is utilized in the actual political economy to make sure that these inequalities don't get closed. So that's why I argue that you have to do something called asking for special dispensation, saying that when we have these class-based programs, for example, when the federal jobs guarantee comes out, you got to say, listen, I love the federal jobs guarantee, but my man, our community here, we have been disproportionately left out and unemployed larger than anyone else for a couple of 100 years. Maybe we need to get about 25% of these federal jobs as opposed to 14 because we got more people who have been denied the ability to get work in the regular workforce. And that, to me, is not about identity politics. That's about making a special dispensation for your particular position when class remedies are instituted to address the fact that you have been rooted in exclusion in this capitalist system in a way that has not been addressed. So a class-based remedy has to make that particular nuance in its application.
Pastor, I got one of those. Like, would you accept if someone said they weren't going to give any special dispensation to anyone that had to prove that they were black or African American or whatever, but just based off of income? Like, if there was special, considerations based off a job,
I mean, it would be race. It would be just because you're black. I don't know, someone like Bob Smith, who's worth $5 billion. Shouldn't get that special dispensation. I'm talking about class remedies. That's why I call them class remedies for working class and poor black people.
Yeah, no, and that's where I think, I'm asking you, like, in the language, right? If they say jobs guarantee, would you want to see like actually like the written out, hey, black people or African American, descendants of, like whatever.
The problem that I think comes into when you say that, Marcus, and I think you were hitting on it, and this, sorry to cut you off, is the whole who is black. Because ask Native Americans about who is Native American. There's a lot of Native Americans that are getting hundreds of millions of dollars in government contracts that are not recognized by Native Americans.
Yeah, no, and I think also
when we ask that question, like, does my kid get it? I don't know. I'm asking. I don't know the answer.
No, yeah, I mean, like my question though is it? I guess, is it possible for people to get strictly behind the class? I guess the class politics or whatever, the class programs, and not have the special consideration actually spelled out. But if you actually do it just based off class, right, you would, like, the majority, so black people would end up getting disproportional help if you focused on poverty. Why? Because in the light of the systemic racism, in light of black people being subjected to the secondary class of labor now, or reserved class of labor, if you have a remedy based off of, hey, if you live in these, like if you make this much money, if it's historically, then then the jobs are coming to you first,
right?
That would overlap. Yeah.
It cannot be just based on race. It has to be based on your class position primarily. But what I'm saying is that because there is a position, if the goal is to bring forth as much parity as possible, and that you coming from a position where you are a XYZ community, and more of the working class of your community is suffering because, say, they don't have healthcare or access to education or the ability to even qualify for those things, then I think that those considerations should be made. I don't think that necessarily disturbs. Someone asked, well, what kind of class programs do we have right now? How about Social Security? How about Medicare? How about the VA system? How about Medicaid? Do we have class systems that exist right now? And people are benefiting from. So I think it can be done. And I'm not saying you always need to have those special dispensations, because if you have a federal jobs guarantee that's giving out those jobs and they're guaranteed, then maybe maybe the allocation will be done naturally. What I'm saying is that the argument to demonstrate how race or gender is particularly utilized in the capitalist system to affect certain contingencies of identity should not be just totally relegated, like, oh, this is identity politics, and because is it identity politics that we talk about? The white working class for 50 years bipartisanly as like how we have to worry about the white working class. Why is that not identity politics? This doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. And I'm tired of people talking about this like it has to be a zero-sum game.
Thank you.
I think you're 100% right. Identity politics. Well, for one, there's like this weird thing. It's like going through school is like they teach you like, oh, hey, identity politics is like this thing where actual politicians recognize, the real conditions that certain identities have, and then we'll base policy decisions based off of that. But that is erased. That's gone. And it's only, hey, how much are we willing to shuck and jive based off of what your reality?
Right? We have the kind of identity politics where we have what Preston Smith called racial democracy, where we have elites negotiating for race policy, but because it's negotiated through these brokers, whether they be the Urban League, the NAACP, or Black Lives Matter, it's done in a class faction where college-educated professional Black elites get the disproportionate share of the benefits, and the Black poor or working class are left behind, i.e. the civil rights movement, i.e. the Black capitalism under Nixon, i.e. a few of those other programs as well. So the consequence of that is that it creates a kind of class-tiered reality that ends up having a situation where you have the top 10% of Black families having 75% of Black wealth.
Sorry, I was sharing this article. There's a couple articles in the LA Times, if you look them up, about this. What happened here? This was some white people claiming to be Cherokee got $300 million in government contracts. There's another article about how $800 million were doled out.
Is this how Elizabeth Warren got her Harvard education paid off?
It's very similar to the Elizabeth Warren thing is a little different, but I would say similar in the sense of these cats kind of just made up some tribal shit and got crazy money from these government contracts.
Well, yeah, that's like, I mean, when it comes to tribes, the United States codifies, literally it codifies what it is to be a tribe, what it is to be an American Indian. And I say that because like that's literally the title that they use for one of the options. There's only a certain amount that they give this designation to. There's a certain amount of money allocated
right there, by the way.
Holy shit, get the fuck out of here. There's a certain amount of money allocated to overall like Indian affairs, and so it becomes some of this like like how many connections do you have and can you get this designation? But like once you have this designation, it's like the money just rolls in.
So I remember reading these a few years ago, and for whatever reason they just never really caught on. I don't know why, but this was a year-long investigative journalistic report by the LA Times. Pretty good article. I will link it in the chat if you guys like. Let me take it off the screen. Sorry.
We did 3 hours today.
We did 3 hours today, and 2.5 of it was with Norman Finkelstein, and I did not think he was going to stay for 2.5 hours. But
and we did talk about the humanity of Palestinians. I don't know how many times, so I just need to say that came up quite a bit.
Oh,
I actually asked him the question about what it would be like to have a one-state Palestinian solution.
Yes,
we were actually on it the entire time.
I loved his answer, to that.
I also like the fact that we challenged him. I was like, so when you say you don't support BDS, are you saying that boycott, divestment, and sanctions is not a valid tactic against Israel? And he was like, no, I support the tactic. I just don't support the way the platform is. I think that was a very important clarification.
Yep. So I'd actually heard him talk on some of the
BDS. It's funny that people are saying that we don't talk about. First of all, if you look at what the way the show was advertised, the show was about to be about cancel culture and how him getting canceled because of his advocacy for Palestinians got him canceled. So we actually did a lot more on Zionism in Palestine than we actually advertised in the show advert.
Yeah, we did. I mean, and there's a few different ways we could have gone with the show, and keep in mind, people, he just wrote a book, or he's writing a book right now about being canceled, and that he told you in the show, 15 years, no job. So, we were going to lean into that. He gave us a little bit of a rough draft to read of what he's been working on, but Pascal actually had ordered his book on the Holocaust industry that he wrote some time ago, actually. So we kind of wanted to cover that a little bit. I don't think we covered that as much as we would have liked to, but we hit on it a little bit, and he definitely is going to hit on it anyway.
Yeah, the first question I asked him.
Yes, I didn't hit on it as much as we'd like to. I want to take a deeper dive. Is that okay with you? Can we take deeper dives, motherfucker? Just because you think you got questions and glasses, you think I can't put glasses on and ask questions? I'm bald too, nigga.
Actually, man, I feel I got too much hair for this. My head, either the top or the chin needs to go for me. I got to get rid of one of these.
Oh shit. Well, are we good? Is everybody happy with the show today? This is again called it's called the Free Show. I jokingly called it Black Ass Saturday. And for the next few Saturdays, it's not going to be as black as it usually is. There's going to be a white guy on next week. He will not be as well.
Yeah, a white guy on this week.
We got a lot of white guys. They're fucking everywhere. The great words of Robin Harris, coming through the goddamn walls.
Oh shit.
Now, are you denying the plight of the Jewish people by just relegating our former guest as just a white man? Are you trying to discredit the oppression of the Jewish peoples?
I wish you guys could have heard the conversation I had with this man I'm not going to get into it, but I'm just going to let you know he went off on some shit. I wish you would have heard it. It would have been definitely something we could have done in private. And I think it would have been we would have done it on the show. It definitely was a private conversation because we say shit amongst each other in private that I don't want you hoes to hear. So I said it. That being said, Tuesday, we'll have on Jamie Peck will be our guest for Tuesday on the live stream, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Next Saturday for the free show, we will have political cartoonist Mr. Fish. He actually does a lot of work with Chris Hedges and what's the name of that? What's the magazine what's the internet magazine that Hedges writes for?
Truth Dig?
Truth Dig. Thank you. I couldn't think. A lot of work with Truth Dig. Maria Repnikova.
Oh, excellent.
Foreign policy guest. We're going to talk about Africa and China with a person that actually works in think tanks and state departments.
Oh no, that sounds. Oh, is that? Yeah, we've talked with that guy before.
Yeah. Well, Cuba is we usually have Jean Bajan and Cuba on because those guys have actually worked in think tanks overseas and done all kinds of crazy.
Janice Graham says, "Can we have Little Marvin on?" Who's Little Marvin?
Is he a rapper?
Little Marvin?
Why does he spell little properly?
People be like, try to get Vijay Prashad. You think look again? It's hard. Angela, tell these people it's hard to get people on the show. Like everybody says, you guys should have Brianna Joy Gray on. You guys should have Brianna Joy Gray is not fucking with anybody with 1,400 Twitter followers. I said it. I said it. She knows it. Because why people do shit like that? Because if you come on my show and we call you out, and that wouldn't be what we try to do, but let's say we call her out on something. Now she had some motherfuckers with 1,500 subscribers that can't wait to call her out on some shit she said 5 years ago, and she's fucked up over it, and maybe she gets quote unquote canceled over it. Motherfuckers ain't risking that shit for 1,500 subscribers.
I mean, I could take down the force the vote shit in about 10 minutes, but nobody wants.
That's what I'm saying. She knows that there's people that fucking push back against her shit, and this isn't a knock on her. I'm just saying this, and this is how this shit is usually played. When you have a bigger following, you probably don't want to go on a smaller show because you're afraid of what can happen to you by fucking with smaller people that have nothing to lose. She has everything to lose.
She wants to see Little Marvin is the producer of Them, the TV show. I've heard about the show.
I haven't seen Them. I've heard bad things about it.
That's right. Interesting. That would be very interesting.
I've heard bad things about that show. You don't like it?
I don't own a television. But I listen to people who do. My aunt was watching it and had some feelings around it. And then a couple of podcasts that I really love went in depth with it. It's not something would want to tune into for any number of reasons, but that's personal to me. I think that if folks are watching it, I think that would be a dope show to have that discussion, because there's things that are coming up as far as what is trauma porn, what is, what exactly is this, and things like that. I think it would be a really, really good discussion.
I'm glad you said it. I didn't trauma porn.
No, I'll say it all.
I never heard that before.
I have nothing to lose.
Hey, I just want people to understand that I can bring on Norman Finkelstein and have him say outlandish shit, because I have nothing to lose. I ain't got no money. The show is getting bigger, but it's not as big as we'd like it to be, of course. And if I got canceled tomorrow, I could still go get a fucking job at Taco Bell. You think Brianna Joy Gray, if she comes on here and we fucking call her, and that's why you're nappy head and just got on her like that, she's fucked up.
We wouldn't do that, by the way.
I wouldn't do that, but she's fucked up. Why do you think she goes on shows like fucking Jimmy Dore all the goddamn time? Why do you think she had Eddie Glaude on? You think she's getting passed? Do you think Cerise Bird-Stelly's going on her show? Hell no. And it's not a knock on her. It's just you get to a certain point in this shit, and unless that's your shtick, right? I'm the motherfucker that takes people on. Well, then that's just your shtick. That is not my shtick, and she doesn't know me from Adam. She's not going to spend the time to sit here and go, let me watch 15 of this nigga shows and see what he's about. She's going to ask somebody in her circle, if that, and usually people look at followings. We were talking about this with music. How do you think so-and-sos get on these fucking festivals and these big-ass tours? You think it has anything to do with the quality of the music? Hell no. How many followers they got? How many streams do they have? So Vijay Prashad might be a different beast. Maybe we can get him. I would like to get him. Trust me, there's people we always say we should, we would like, we should, we would like, and I got a lot of blanks in the email right now of no responses. If you guys want these people on the show, I'll be real. People respond to see tweets. There's a gentleman that likes the show, and he actually sent out fucking tweets, and people actually got back to me because of the tweets this gentleman sent out. I'll be totally honest with you. Pascal and I are going to be on the Miki Kant's show. A lot of it has to do with somebody fucking sending out a message.
And Pascal wants to tell me that Twitter's not real life. I'm just messing with you.
Anyway, I just wanted to say, for those who've been watching, we had a very good week of episodes this week. Tuesday, Jason and I did a show on automation. Will the robots replace us post-COVID? Check out that episode. It was very good. It was just the two of us talking about an article that talked about how 30 to 42% of the jobs that were lost during COVID were replaced by animation. That was a good show. Then on Wednesday, we went on Ben Burgess's show to talk about the Derek Chauvin verdict. It was a 2-hour show. Great show. Find that on the YouTubes as well, or check our Twitter streams. And then on Thursday, what did we do on Thursday? Who did we have on Thursday? We had a good show on Thursday. Oh, Thursday we did it with Besner.
We had Daniel Besner
with Daniel Besner. It was a great show. A lot of people liked. We talked about Obama's autobiography. A lot of people liked that episode as well. And we had today. So we had a really, I think we've had a really good, solid week of production. Support us, become a patron, subscribe, hit the like, share, hit the bell, and support This Is Revolution. If you like this kind of black left content that is not sectarian, that tries to hit all the corners, give you a materialist analysis, but does not deny the realities of the way race and gender and other things are used in capitalism. And tries to bring nuance here. We don't necessarily say we always get it right, but at least we try to do the best that we can.
Also, Pascal is going to be on the homie Kenzo Shibata show with Marcus tomorrow.
Yeah, I got you. I'm gonna win, Pascal. This is my third time being on the show, so I'm gonna win. As finally we get to do some debate bro stuff. I know that's what you want.
Is that his format? Is it debate?
No. It's a fake. It's fake. It's almost like a. If you've ever seen Part of the Interruption, it's like the sports show. It's
very similar to that.
It's similar to that, but it's like there's no points. People just talk and have a good time.
Somebody's asked. Yes, Pascal and I did an interview with Cerise Bird-Stelly. It is audio only. I think it's episode. It's episode 1 something. So also the show is on SoundCloud. Apple Podcasts. There's an audio dump that I do for a lot of the shows. So if you've watched the live streams, you'll find that a lot of the audio interviews are not live streams. So I've done these audio interviews for some time now. So I have interviews from Alex Vitale, Gerald Horn.
We're going to have Milton Almaty on May 6th.
Yes.
We've already booked Milton Almaty to talk about Africa, the African continent overall.
And apparently right now, Zero Books is running our interview with Adolph Reed, the first hour. If you guys are finding us through Zero Books, definitely become patrons and see the second hour of all these interviews. We definitely get a lot looser on the second hour, as you can only imagine. I have a lot more fun in the second hour. Pascal's nice and loose because it's later over there where he is. So I thought the Adolph Reed episode was a lot of fun because I've never seen Adolph Reed that raw. So that was fun. This was kind of, I warned y'all. I was like, look, I'm telling y'all, and I didn't think I was gonna have the whole crew because Pascal had warned me that Angela might have to work today. So I figured Angela might be coming in later. So when I saw her ass show up so early, I was like, oh shit, we got the whole motherfucking crew. And we got an image for the crew that does not include Marcus, and that is for a reason. It's because Marcus,
oh damn,
chooses to have no image on the internet other than memes.
Yep.
So you got to either shoot me your press photo.
I like that. I'm you can't find me. I like that. I dig that. Like you just made my day.
That you're the ghost face of the Saturday crew.
Operational security.
So the guy that does the images, I'll always send him an image, and he'll always take a different image than the one I send him because he's like, nah, this isn't good enough. I'll find a better one.
There's my right now.
Mm-hmm.
My Avi for Twitter is myself and my cat Winston replacing DMX and Nas as the cover of Belly. And I don't know why you wouldn't want to use that picture.
We can't use that picture, Marcus. We got serious photos. Angela, fresh shot. Pascal, that's his lawyer shot.
No, you're being speciesist to my cat. I don't like this this is a feline hate that you're trying to bring up in here.
I say include Winston. I mean, that's some real shit.
Well,
include
give
Winston.
Me a fucking shot of you and the fucking cat, man. I got to give it to the guy. The guy said he's like, Jason, I finally got this image up for you. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, you know why it doesn't have Marcus? Because he's like a fucking myth.
Ghost.
Put
Hell
your
yeah.
fucking government name on that shit and fuck your whole life up.
Oh no.
I like cats and dogs here. I got 2 dogs. I love cats. I mean, it's not see, that's that whole either or
sectarianism.
Shit. We like all of them. We like them all. They all welcome here. That's how we do it around here. One thing I wanted to bring up with the 3 of y'all, could y'all a PayPal, because some of us cannot commit to Patreon because money get funny sometimes of the year. So we need y'all to make PayPal so folks can come by and drop stuff in the collection plate as they are able. So if you got a PayPal, hit you that way too. I'm just saying.
Marcus, when we talk about this beforehand, that I haven't had a chance to sit down with everybody and talk about all these ideas and get all this shit ironed out. So I will take the responsibility for that L. So next show, all that shit will be up. I promise you that. Look at Pascal looking mad. Why are you looking mad? Just look happy for us to change, motherfucker.
No, what? Yo, that's my normal. Yo, man, I'm just not Mr. I don't do that all the time, man.
Why you gotta go from mad to Bojangles? Can there be an in between? Goddamn.
Welcome to This Is Revolution.
Seriously. Why? Oh, listen, you ever look at the classic pictures of black people in the 30s and 40s? You ever notice one thing? No one is smiling.
Do you know why that is? Cameras didn't work like they work now, motherfucker. This shit took forever. Them niggas took the picture, nigga. That's why it looked like that. I've been sitting here for 25 minutes with these badass kids. You never got kicked in the nuts by a child taking a picture before, I can tell.
You don't have to smile, Pascal. It's cool. It's cool.
I smile and laugh all the time. I'm just saying, man.
He does. In all fairness, I'll stop fucking. We talk daily, and when we talk daily, it's usually a lot of shit talk, and the giggling is insane to the point where when Pascal calls or I call Pascal, my girl goes, "Are you talking to your girlfriend?"
Aww.
Man, you got the bromance. The bromance.
Yeah, she's always got something smart to say. God damn it. Hope
someone's gonna say something smart in that house.
Shots fired. Yeah. Hey, well, I'm so glad you made the show today. Thank you for those house music suggestions you sent me.
Yes, that playlist is life.
Thank you.
We have to do a whole episode on the politics of house music. Somebody actually proposed that to me. I can't remember who it was.
Oh, wow.
Had sent that wanted to talk about like the history and how it kind of got co-opted. And I was like, oh wow, you know.
Yes.
Who can we get? Who do we get for that?
Please, yes.
A lot of the founders are gone, right? A lot of the guys that started that movement passed away.
Frankie
Knuckles is gone. I know. Yeah.
I thought a few more people had passed away.
Larry Levan's been dead for a while.
We'll figure it out. I want to do a music episode. We're definitely putting one together for the 4th of May. We're going to talk about the future of music in the COVID era. So there's a lot of good shit coming on. Pascal, I did get a confirmation from the dude that wrote that Washington Post article.
Dope. Excellent.
Tell people about the Washington Post article real quick.
Yeah, there was an excellent Washington Post article written by a future guest that was shared with us by our friend of the show, Tori Reed. It talks about how one of the obstacles to police reform is the makeup of municipal governments and how the municipal governments defer a lot of police decision-making to city managers as opposed to the mayor. Oftentimes what you see is people saying, well, how come the mayor these times? So how come the mayor can't do X? And the way in which these cities have been structured is that they defers political authority to police management to alternative structures that are actually outside the jurisdiction of the mayor's office. Interesting article, and we're going to have the guest on who wrote it to talk about it. We'll share that right before we have that.
When is that? Next Saturday?
May 18th, which is a Tuesday, I believe. And one of these Saturdays, I have to look on the calendar. We have a woman that's going to talk about, she actually had wrote a paper about homelessness in LA, and a decision was coming down. I don't know if you guys saw it, where the mayor was like, well, we're going to round up all the homeless people and we're going to put them in shelters and housing. We got all this money for it. We're going to do it. But what was happening, the homeless rights advocates were saying, well, what you guys are trying to do is put them in temporary housing, not permanent housing. And you're using this as a way to round them up and get them the fuck off the street, because the people that were behind this bill were developers and the real estate lobbies. So this woman actually wrote a paper that a judge used to put a halt to the whole thing. And she's coming on the show as well. So we got some interesting shit planned. Someone said you guys shouldn't always go for the big names, try to get local people. I have. And we try to. It is harder than you think, basically, because we have different movements. We all live in different cities. Angela lives in South Carolina. Paul is in Philadelphia. Marcus is in the Northeast. And Pascal is in Miami. So, and I'm in Oakland. And you would think there'd be a lot of Oakland people on. If you listen to the show when it was just audio only early on, people still were coming in my studio. It was mostly just local, because there was people that were around that were community organizers, and we would do this same thing in studio, which I thought was a lot more fun. I can't wait till the world opens up again. I'm gonna fly you chocolatey Negroes out.
Every week.
I'm saving all my lunch money for that flight to fly you chocolatey Negroes out here, and we can have an in-studio show. We'll do it at the studio on the big stage.
We need to have a leftist media influencer house. We could start developing that up. That way we all meet. The studio's all there for everybody to use.
Yeah,
make it happen.
That was the original plan with my studio. It just didn't work out that way. COVID came and scared a lot of people, and then I didn't want just anybody walking in the door, and also where it's located scared the Jesus out of most people that would come by. because the homeless campus it was just so massive and started to get really violent. So that being said, I want to say thank you to my wonderful Saturday Crew co-hosts. Maybe we should make some Saturday Crew t-shirts or some shit like that. Just trying to figure out how it will work. Working on some merchandise designs. Actually, while the show was going on, I was having a back and forth. That's why I was gone. About some designs for some ideas for This Is Revolution stuff. So I'm excited. Tomorrow, oh shit, I forgot to say tomorrow. So Pascal and Marcus are doing their thing tomorrow. Kenzo's about a show. Tomorrow, me, Ben Burgess, Forrest, who else? I'm gonna say his name wrong.
Karthik.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yeah, I was actually DMing with Karthik this morning.
We're doing a show. Are you coming on the show tomorrow for the Oscars?
Me?
Yeah.
I wasn't invited. You're just telling me about it right now.
You're invited.
I'm invited to what now?
The Oscar show.
What time is it?
8:00 your time.
Well, we got the thing. Maybe after Kenzo's show, we'd have to pop on.
Oh, we got Kenzo's show. Yeah. I'm sorry, I forgot you're on.
So tomorrow night. Yeah.
Fuck it. But yeah, that's going on tomorrow. We're doing a special Sunday Oscars show. We're going to talk about some of the movies that were nominated for Oscars, and I'll definitely get into why I think some of these movies are problematic. Was it The Five Bloods, Judas and the Black Messiah, Nomadland? There's another one. I can't remember.
Y'all's discussion, like for people who have not listened to him, the discussion that y'all had, particularly about Judas and the Black Messiah, might be something that folks go back and listen to. It's pretty badass.
Thank you.
That was another Jason and Pascal special. That was a 2-man team there.
I'm gonna stand.
Those work out pretty well sometimes.
Yes, I like the Jason and Pascal shows. I think that a lot of our conversations off air could be fucking podcasts. Even the three of us, our conversations off air could be podcasts because it's pretty fucking funny. And I've had all of us off air conversations could be amazing shows. So
somebody said.
Mm-hmm. What they say?
Watch The Spook Who Sat by the Door. Baby, I saw that in high school, and I have the book.
We watched it on our Discord. We watched it with the patrons.
We had a whole Patreon chat. Had a film night with that movie.
So now every month we're going to do a movie. We haven't decided what the next movie is, but Spook Who Sat by the Door kind of blew me away, especially because I was watching. What was I watching?
Black Dynamite. Maybe that'll be the next one.
Oh, you do that? It's a little. No. He got a little Richard. A little.
He gives you a little dick.
A little dick.
Gene Bajlan says our off-camera conversations would get us canceled. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ooh, Jesus.
Yes, they definitely would. So thank you guys for sticking around. I'm going to try to find my family who's pissed off at me because this show went on longer than I always lie and say, it's only going to be a couple hours. It's only going to be a couple hours. And then 3 hours later, I get this look by her and the kid like,
lied again.
Mm-hmm. So thank you guys. And let's see if we're around Tuesday. There's a couple times I do want to say this on air. There's a couple times Pascal went, "Oh," because he knew he was like, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. That was hilarious. So, yes. See you guys on Tuesday. Pascal and Marcus Kenzo Shibata show tomorrow at 4.
7 Central. Yeah, 4. So 8
p.m.
Eastern, 7 Central. What 4 West? Well, I don't know, something like that.
5.
I know it's 8 p.m. Eastern, man.
8 p.m. Eastern. Yeah.
And then also at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we'll be doing the Oscars show. Ben Burgess, Forrest, the producer. What's the brother's name again?
Karthik.
Karthik. I always want to say Cathartic.
Yeah.
Karthik.
He makes it easier. Karthik. Yeah.
Karthik. K Money. That's his name. That's a dope ass name. That's a dope name.
Yeah, you can
change the Twitter handle.
K Money.
K Money. K Money. I'm in this bitch. K Money.
Then he gets to change it to K $sign in a few months.
We already in trouble.
All right, on that
we already in trouble. Y'all just gonna dig it deeper, right?
I like to call this, Angela, the 12 o'clock in the morning ass whooping. You know, you have a curfew of 11 and you go like, fuck that. I'm grown. And he's going to take that 12 o'clock ass whooping.
K Cash. Oh, maybe it's just cash spelled with a K.
Oh, shit. Well, Karthik, Forrest, Karthik actually, it was his idea. So I want to give him props. It was his idea, Forrest, and then we said Ben Burgess. Maybe we'll have Megan Day on as well from Jacobin. Not sure. So it'll be a lot of people talking about the Oscars. I didn't want to bother Angela with it because I know she actually has a life and she does a lot.
I ain't got a life. I got to be in the bed at 8 o'clock because I have to be up at like 3 in the morning. It's fucking ridiculous. I ain't got no life.
Like I said. Somebody says, Jay stay getting his ass whooped. If you only knew what my life was like as a teenager. I stayed having both divorced parents with a foot in the deepest region of my behind. Didn't matter what house I was going to.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, we are